Using the gavel to get us to order. I know that goes so quickly. I'll call this meeting to order as it's the regular City Council meeting of the Seward City Council, Monday, June 12th, 2023. It is 7 p.m. Chief, would you lead us in the pledge, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'll ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Councilmember Barnwell.
Here.
Councilmember DeMoss.
Here.
Councilmember Calhoun.
Here.
Councilmember Osenga.
Here.
Councilmember Finch.
Here.
Councilmember Wells.
Here.
Mayor McClure.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. This is the citizen comment time. You can comment on any subject except items scheduled for public hearing. We have a few public hearing items tonight. You can speak to those at that time. The time's limited to 3 minutes, and there's a sign up. And if you didn't sign up, you can raise your hand after those spoken that have signed up, and I will call on you, and there's a 36-minute total time for this. Madam Clerk, is there anyone signed up?
Mayor McClure, there are no citizens signed up on the comment sheet.
No one has signed up. Are there any citizens or people in general out there that would like to comment at this time? Okay, see. Oh, okay. You do your routine.
You gotta be quicker. Alan Nickel, outside the city limits, also the chief of police, and I just wanted to give council a quick, just good news. As you are aware, we had the grand opening for the animal shelter on Saturday, and we didn't go into it with the expectation of doing any sort of fundraising, but there was donations. And I just wanted you guys to know that we brought in an additional $818.11. So pretty nice for 4 hours of our time, and it was just a really good event. So I just wanted to say thanks to the citizens, and we appreciate the support. Thank you.
Thank you. It was a good event. Anyone else? Give you a moment. Seeing none, I'll close that citizen comment time, and we're to approval of the agenda in the consent agenda, and I'd ask for a motion and a second, please.
So I'll move for the approval of tonight's agenda and consent agenda.
I'll second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. We can discuss this. I have one item. I will like to take off of the consent agenda item 7D1, action memoranda about the, it's 2023-006, opposing the KPB ordinance. And I'm going to place that at item 10B, action memoranda. And we will discuss it then. I'll explain why I removed it. Okay? Are there any other changes to the agenda? I'll give you a moment to look through. Okay, seeing none, I guess that's the only change. So Madam Clerk, could you call the roll on?
For agenda and consent agenda, Councilmember DeMoss.
Yes.
Councilmember Wells.
Yes.
Councilmember Finch.
Yes.
Councilmember Barnwell.
Yes.
Councilmember Calhoun.
Yes.
Councilmember Osenga.
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Agenda and consent agenda was approved unanimously. On the consent agenda was approved approval of the May 22nd, 2023 City Council minutes, introduction of ordinance 2023-016, amending Seward City Code Chapter 5.20 improvement districts, Introduction of ordinance 2023-017, amending Seward City Code, Chapter 2.15, ordinances and resolutions. Resolution 2023-070, accepting the State of Alaska Healthy and Equitable Communities Grant in the amount of $49,162, acting as a pass-through agency for Sewer Prevention Coalition and appropriating funds.
Okay, thank you. We have no proclamations or awards tonight, so this brings us to the city manager report. Acting City Manager Regis, what you got?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So you have my report in there. The only other thing I'd like to report, of course, comes from the harbor area, is that we did have a second vessel sink here a couple days ago, but the vessel has been refloated, and then, once again, no loss of fuel or oil. So that was a good thing. Staff's out there boomed it up right away, just anything contained that would leak out. So that everything went well. Everything went well on Saturday also at the Pride event. Just want to say that after the lots of talking we had, so it was really nice.
Okay. Any questions for the city manager or the assistant city manager? Yes, Councilmember Tomas.
Yeah, I'm going to have some questions for Mr. Bickley in Community Development. Would now be an appropriate time to ask those?
Is it for anything on tonight's agenda, or?
Just regarding his report.
Okay.
The reports are in there. I guess that would be the time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess I had a question regarding the no-shows on the commissioners that didn't come and you had to cancel the last meeting. I guess I wanted to touch on if those commissioners, if that's been a habitual issue. I know that we just discussed tightening up some of those rules as far as attendance goes, and also what the impact of that is for you and the commission and the city as a whole when that happens.
Yeah, so we did have some no-shows that on the 23rd for our work session that caused us, we were all here at the dais and we had to cancel with no quorum. So it is very difficult because the commissioners take time out. The staff kind of preps that up. We get all the packets built for that evening. The police department puts someone here for 2 hours, they pay them, and then when we have to cancel, we have to like kind of start a lot of those processes over and repost. And so it's a very large inconvenience, and then it also really backs us up just in business items, which we all know about. And then with, we also had, so from that meeting on the 23rd, we had some unexcused absences, and then this last week we did have a full, we did have a quorum, but we also had more unexcused absences from the same commissioners.
So I guess my question would be to, I'm not sure who, but at this point, what would be an appropriate plan of action? Would you need direction from the council to remove those commissioners based on their attendance and advertise for 2 new seats, or how would that work?
My plan was to communicate this to you in some kind of memo. Mr. Stoll and I discussed this recently, just because in the new regulations, it says if a member has 2 consecutive unexcused absences, 3 unexcused absences total, misses 8 meetings and an appointment year has a record of attendance which shows disregard for the position and hinders the function of the commission. Administration will inform council, and the council may remove the member from the commission. And so it was our plan of action to do that here shortly in some kind of memo form, and since they're both back in the office now, but we're doing that, I guess, obviously right now as well.
Does that answer your question?
I guess, yes, that does answer my question, and as long as we know that that's coming back to us and we can make a decision soon regarding that.
Correct. So, Madam Mayor, sorry. Yeah, so we looked back, we could never find anything that was done, so I figured a memorandum or something back to council requesting that certain person be removed from P&Z.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much for answering.
Thank you.
You said you had other questions? Do you want to go ahead? Is it okay if she goes ahead with hers? Okay.
I just have a couple more questions on, these are regarding the utility billing, so I'm not sure who I would ask about that. we had talked about if we, I don't know who wants to answer it, but I don't know who hears.
Utility billing?
So I guess we had discussed, Rob, we had discussed at some point, I know you had mentioned to council that you were interested in putting one of the billing or administrative positions in your actual building.
That was before outsourcing, correct.
Okay, so that would not, so if we outsource them, and you said that we would still have someone on premise for people to pay their bill, that person would be in this building or in your building?
This building, and also handling public works as well.
Okay. And thank you. I have one more question regarding utility billing. I have heard that the net metering billing hasn't been working properly.
Right.
Is that working properly? Are people getting billed?
The people are getting billed every month,
Okay.
and it's completely manually set up. It's through spreadsheets and formulas. It's very, I will say, kind of hard for right now. But been working with Utility Assist, so our plan is to have them live in July, and one of the priorities is the net metering.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. One more question, just one. Finance director position, did we get the rescore back on the salary from GovHR that we had asked for at the last meeting?
What's that? Oh, Tammy's gone.
Oh, okay.
We'll get that question answered for you.
Thank you very much. That's all.
Okay. Councilmember Wells.
I have a, excuse me, a question for Director Binkling as well. First of all, thank you for the detailed report. I always appreciate how precise it is, and I'm only asking this question for our citizens' understanding. So under the your fourth paragraph down on STR compliance, and STR for the community is the short-term rental, correct? And it says, we have had a few operators that has found that we're not registered with the city, state, business, borough, tax, or short-term rental permit. We're working to bring them into compliance. We're also working with a couple of improper use and property violations. My question is a few 3 or is a few 10?
A few is, right now, it's like 3. 'Cause
Okay.
we're dealing with some very small magnitudes of compliance when it comes to like the higher level of, most of the time when we deal with compliance issues, overall I would say short-term rentals are a fairly compliant group. We have a couple, that we have a list of people that we kind of have to go talk with and bring things to. Most people are really compliant when you send them a letter and be like, hey, I didn't know if you're aware, but you do need a business license. And a lot of times they're people just starting a business out, and they usually come around pretty quickly. We have a couple, there always seems to be a couple that choose to be difficult. And so those are the ones that do take a lot of time, and we are pursuing those. Like you saw that you guys approved a suit. And that was one of those people where we do have to bring them into compliance in kind of in that manner, so.
Go ahead.
Follow up? So thank you for that. And then back to the absence during the P&Z meetings. So for the public, if you haven't seen this document, I recommend pulling this up and looking at it, because some of these folks just this year, if I'm correct, so far this year to date, have had one has had 6 absences, another one 5, 4, 5, and 3. But I didn't see in here, and it's probably because I'm blind, but whether they were excused or not.
I don't know which report you're looking at, but here's my, and I would just, maybe this is answering your question from the information I don't have in front of me right now, but for me, like for us, the overall absences are not the issue, because we have some commissioners that have been dealing with some family situations that like absolutely, like they should be dealing with them. It's the people, it's the unexcused ones when we're not informed or people do not communicate with us. that we have to spool up for and spend all this energy only to have it not work out that night. And so anyway, that's I know we do have a few people that do have some higher absences this year, but we do have a couple that are for very good reasons, and they're very valuable to the commission, and they're always good communicators. But it's the ones that do not communicate with us and just kind of leave us hanging that really are that are the issue.
Okay.
So, does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Any other questions for administration? Councilmember DeVos.
Thank you. I have one more question that I know I would get in trouble with several people if I didn't ask. The construction, can you give us a little quick?
You have to bring it.
I guess my biggest question would be, are they going to be working on nights again? Because I've had a lot of business owners that are on that street complain about it being very difficult to access their businesses during the day. I know it's loud, I know.
Correct. So I talked with some of the business owners, and we had some good conversations. So the problem is here shortly, they're done with the cutting, and but they're going to start cutting up the pavement here, and that's really super noisy. And all those houses, there's 50-plus houses there that the people were upset. Not the ones, not all 50 replied. I mean, called in, but at 2 in the morning, they recorded it. It's really crazy, and they couldn't sleep. So I understand, can't make everybody happy. So I decided to make the decision they move during the day, do the work during the day, and I'm sorry it's going to be an inconvenience, but it's going to be great when it's done. And I asked them, the company, if they can keep it shortened when they're working, so not the whole 5, 6, 10 blocks are busy. They can shorten it up, and so far they can be compliant. It's been a lot better since that first day. I think that's where we're at, and I told them they can go back to nights if they keep it down, keep the noise level down. He goes, well, everything I do makes noise, which like, yep, but a backhoe in the evening is not going to make as much noise as a cutting saw. Pouring concrete at night is not going to make much noise as a cutting saw. As in, when they start thumping the road there with the rollers, you want to do that during the day. You can't do it at night. And they told me to tell people, if you got stuff on the shelves, it's going to be pretty good to maybe secure it. So, so that's where I'm at with it. And I think, it's going to be inconvenience for some of the businesses, correct. But you also have those other roads that they can come by. I know one is on a one-way street, so it's a little bit more difficult. But the other ones, you can come off the side streets.
Great. Do we have an ETA for a finish time?
It was supposed to be done by September, I think.
Okay. Councilmember.
Actually, I believe Councilmember Finch
Yeah,
was.
Councilmember Finn.
Because I had people call me, they had a pilot car starting at Nash this morning, and the work was at Wells Fargo.
So they were doing some work on the bridges. I don't know what they were doing, but when I came through, they weren't there. But when somebody came down 15 minutes later, they were doing something at the bridges. So I think that car went away after an hour or so. So just while they were doing some work there.
Because people are asking as they go with their equipment, they can just put a flagger on each side instead of a pilot car and just direct the traffic around it.
Yeah, they have to apply with the state with a flagging, with a plan, and the plan is by the state's requirements, they have to have a pilot car on the main highway. That's the reason.
I just wanted that out for
Okay,
public
no,
knowledge.
that's fine.
So.
Yeah.
There you go.
Councilmember Wells.
If it's acceptable, I have some questions for Director Montgomery regarding his report.
Oh, sure.
Sure.
First, I want to say thank you as well. Your reports are always incredibly detailed, and I don't want you to think I'm ambushing you. I'm asking you these questions for the public, okay?
Sure.
So on the, first of all, on the 4th paragraph, infrastructure overtime of your report, it says total overtime hours for the 4-man line crew and 2 plant operators for the infrastructure project WO number 4236 from May 22nd through June 2nd. Overtime hours was 189 hours. Line crew members also worked on additional 15.5 hours on other activities. Can you explain to the public what those additional 189 hours?
Yeah, I've actually asked our line foreman, Brian Thrall, to come in and talk a little bit about the overtime, so hang on.
Thank you.
So yeah, obviously we've been working a lot of hours, and I told Rob my one regret from my presentation last time. Councilmember Calhoun asked about, will we see more overtime that we'll have to approve? I've never dealt with that as far as the approval process for more overtime, so I did misspeak on that. So the generators, we need to man those with around the clock with two people at all times. I did explore the option of just one operator at night, and just, you know, if the power goes out or the generator stops making noise, just make a phone call, we'll call somebody in. That doesn't work because our lease says that we have to check the oil every 2 hours. To do that, we have to go into a substation, which is live, and it's just not appropriate to send somebody in there by themselves.
These are the large generators that we rented, so that when we were doing work on Nash, we could keep the lights on for our customers in that area.
Correct.
Yep, so I have a couple other questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
The follow-up question is...
And if I may,
please.
Sturgeon's a week ahead of time. I'll be putting out notice tomorrow for getting off generation Thursday at 6 p.m.
Wow.
Cool. Wonderful, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Brian.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Director Montgomery.
Yeah.
On your second to the last paragraph, 2023 rate study.
Yeah.
Again, this is for our citizens, right? So rate consultants, Mike Hubbard of the Financial Engineering Company, will visit Seward to begin due diligence for the 2023 electric rate study. The study is expected to run through August with a presentation to the City Council in September. The timing for implementation of the rate increase will be discussed with Council once the study is completed. My question to you, again, for our citizens.
Sure.
Since we did not sell the utility, what type of rate increase are we expecting?
You know, I don't want to get ahead of the study. During the, going toward the vote, we were talking about a 12 to 15% increase in our base rates. You know, I would think that we're probably still going to be in that ballpark. I am expecting us to maybe go up a little bit on that amount. So I would say 15 to 20%.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are my final questions. I appreciate your time a lot.
Other questions in terms of the city manager's report? Looking around. Councilmember Wells.
I do have questions for our city attorney at this point. Is that, or do we wait?
He's giving
His report next? Okay, my bad, thank you.
Okay, just related to administration. Okay, moving along to the city clerk report. The city clerk is out on training, and do you want to speak to the report at all, Karen?
City Clerk Peck is out at the professional development training for his municipal clerk qualification, and I have nothing more to add.
Okay.
It appears he had a good time and the training was well received from the conference.
Okay, his report is on page 31. I suggest you all read it because it's very sweet. And I swore him in. There's a picture of the swearing. And so that was exciting and wondrous in itself. We're very happy to have him. We're happy to have Karen here tonight. So then, that brings us to the city attorney report, which you'll find on page 33, and we have our attorney here. So,
good evening again. Good to see everyone. Workload last month dialed back a little bit, mostly because there wasn't work to do on the utility sale that had occupied quite a bit of my time. So it was a little bit more of a standard month as far as we were concerned. Had some public records requests, Open Meetings Act issue. We worked on the ordinances that you approved as part of your consent agenda, and we started working on one that's a little bit more complex, which is the last piece of the building code update. That'll probably pop up on your agenda at least within the next meeting in June, I would hope. We had a little bit of involvement in, ongoing renovation work at the Van Gilder as to, bringing that into building code compliance, which was something we started working on a while back, but is, in progress now. The election had a couple of issues that you're familiar with, and on the labor front, we've had a EEOC complaint filed, but it's relatively similar to something that was in a grievance, which is pending a decision by an independent, hearing officer as part of the last step in the grievance process, which is, an arbitration, which is called. So this is not, in some respects, it's different because it's a different body, but really the underlying facts are quite similar to that. So it takes some time, but I don't think it'll be a complete duplicate of time previously spent. We've worked a little bit on this one lawsuit that has to do with STR enforcement, and also we have ongoing legal advice that we give, trying to get a campground into compliance. Reviewed a rezoning ordinance, and looked at some Coast Guard comments on a purchase and sale agreement, which I think will be coming before you relatively soon as well. Also, something to look forward to, I guess, if you like to have things to do as a council, is there will be a lease amendment to the Icicle lease that puts to bed and puts the final touches on an environmental issue that arose. Basically, they've been through a fairly long process with the state that's now been resolved, but it ends up with, a covenant against the property, and that requires a revision of the lease, which is, from our standpoint, perfectly acceptable stuff, but it's just a little bit of work. Everything's been done, we're just waiting for OBI principals to sign the document so that when it comes to you, everyone's already signed it. So that's kind of the summary of my report. I did hear that folks might have had questions, attorney-type questions earlier in the evening, so if you want to take a run at them now, I'm happy to try to answer them if they're still relevant.
Okay, Councilmember Wells.
Thank you for your time, and I believe my questions are relevant. They're directly related to your report. I have three-part questions, three different questions on your report. And again, this is to clarify for our citizens, okay? It says that you advised on the Opens Meeting Act, which I appreciated. If available, or not available, but if allowable, please explain why we had to have so many executive sessions during the time spent, during the building up to the utility sale. I think it's important, even though we are past the vote, that our citizens realize, because we're still getting comments. Our local newspaper is still writing articles that are negatively directed towards our amount of executive sessions. So I request that you clarify for the public why we had to have so many executive sessions. My second question is, I'm aware that one of our local hotels, and since it's in your report, I believe I'm allowed to mention it, the Van Gilder, I noticed that they're open, and I think it's important that the citizens know that it's because the building's been, as far as I understand, brought to compliance. And then my final question is, you continue to advise regarding potential enforcement actions, including an unpermitted campground. My question is, do you expect to resolve this issue anytime soon, especially since this unpermitted campground is jam-packed and generating revenue at this point?
Okay, so I'll take them, I guess, in reverse order. Resolving the unpermitted campground is, I guess I'm somewhat pessimistic. I mean, when we talk about resolution, our primary goal is, voluntary compliance, no fines, no actions taken, and that's the trade, right? Is you come into compliance and we won't try to do everything we could do, and we won't go to court to shut you down in the middle of summer and impact your income and all that stuff. So, we're not there yet, so frankly, and, the way that process works, at least, to municipalities that I represent, is our office doesn't initiate a lawsuit without the blessing of the elected officials. I've pretty much always operated that way when it comes to civil litigation. So if that's necessary, it'll come before you in the form of a resolution that authorizes us to go forward. That ratchets up the pressure, so to speak, because it's a public process. And, whether that has any impact or not, or whether we actually have to do that now, I don't know. I mean, we believe this is all capable of being resolved without having to do that. So, and we are, we're working, there's legal representation from the property owner. So, there's attorney-to-attorney discussions. I'm not primarily responsible for that particular file. It's my partner, Sam, but I'm kind of up to speed on it. And there's just some back and forth, but it hasn't definitely not been satisfactorily resolved now, and I guess I would peg it as a 50-50 possibility at this point. Okay, going back to the Open Meetings Act, and I hope I'm not forgetting something that was in between there.
Nope.
Open Meetings Act, from the city attorney's perspective, the idea is to give you advice on what are permitted subjects to be discussed in executive session. There are two general categories, but then there's also kind of a third that this one was kind of combined, two out of the three. The two general categories are matters the immediate public discussion of which might have a negative impact on city finances, and that's the second one is matters which, if discussed in public, could have a negative impact on somebody's reputation. The city manager application process is a good example of that second category. The sale of the utility kind of fell into the first category, but also with the addition that some of the proposers wanted to their details of their information to remain confidential during the process, and it can be so. In my view, because we're talking about huge sums of money, up in excess of $30 million, and so decisions on which entity to go with and that type of thing certainly had a financial, potential financial impact on Seward that, in my view, would be relatively immediate and significant. So, in that respect, it would qualify for discussion in executive session. I don't, but there is a big picture aspect to that that I think everyone on council needs to understand, and might not always be well understood by elected officials, and that is this. In many instances, the fact that something qualifies for executive session does not mean that it's legally required to be discussed in executive session. So in these motions to go into executive session, from my view as the attorney, have two components. One is it appropriate? Does it meet the requirements of the Open Meetings Act to be discussed in executive session, which is kind of where I come in to give advice. The second component is, well, do we as a body want to discuss this in executive session versus discussing it in public? And I think some of the differing opinions regarding this sometime combine those two concepts. And so people might say, well, it wasn't legal to do this in executive session when, part of their argument is, well, it should have been discussed in public. And so there is a kind of a difference there, and everyone can have their own, thoughts about it. But usually, with a negotiation and with at this level involving this amount of money, it's certainly not unusual for elected officials to be talking about things in executive session, including, the terms, like, are we going to make a counter offer to these people and ask for more money, or ask for something else, or ask for this? And, and I spent a fair bit of time with you folks in executive session discussing exactly those things and game playing on, well, if we do this, what will the reaction be, and what are the possible impacts on regulatory commission, and things that would fall within even another category, which is you're getting legal advice from your lawyer, which is covered by what's called the attorney-client privilege. And there certainly is a component of executive sessions that say things that are qualified under the law to be confidential, and documents that are can be discussed in executive session. There's within the news media world, I've certainly in the course of my career had a few conversations either with publishers or with attorneys that represent newspapers. There's certainly differing views on the scope of executive session, and the folks that are in the news business tend to have a narrower view on it. It's definitely not a completely black and white type of law, and so it's not unheard of for newspapers to argue with city attorney types as to whether something should or shouldn't have been discussed in executive session. So I hope that helps, or it helps the public. It might not, but these are fairly significant considerations for everyone in Seward, both folks that are living here and people that sit on the council.
Councilmember Wells.
Yep. One of the things, thank you, and I do believe that helps, and I to everybody out there, I hope that you understand how and why we were in so many executive sessions, and a lot of things, a lot of derogatory things about all of us council members. We're going around, that same backdoor deal term. And I thank you for clarifying that, because the last thing we want to do is hide anything from the public. One of the things that you stated was, and I want to clarify that I heard it correctly, was that some of the proposals, I believe was the word that you used, requested that the things we were speaking about be confidential, and therefore that's one of the reasons why we had some of these things in executive session. Did I understand that correctly?
That was my understanding, that some of the people that put in proposals, there were two people that put in proposals, and their expectation was that they would be kept confidential until sort of the winner was announced. So that's, and that's certainly, the other aspect of this, of course, is action has to be taken in public. So none of the actual decision that was made as to go with Homer Electric was made in executive session. That was discussion, and the decision was made in front of the public by the council. And certainly at that point, everyone would expect that the decision would include, explanations from the elected officials as to, why am I voting for Homer Electric versus Chugach Electric? Why are we doing that? Because that's the normal democratic process. Motion, second, discussion. People indicate whether they're in favor of it, and if so, why. And that was perfectly appropriate to be done in public, because you had a motion for action that was on the table.
So, Mike, thank you again. So for the public, it's very important to be clear that we had two proposals. either one or both requested that it remain confidential. We discussed vast sums of money and negotiations, which were part and advised by our attorney, which fell under the attorney-client privilege, which fell under the executive session. For the public, my final question, is the council permitted to make decisions in executive session?
Oh, absolutely not. That's a very clear violation of state law.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for those questions. Any other questions for the attorney? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Next, we were going to have Cindy Eklund, our Borough Assembly rep here, and it was an important report, and she's not here. So I will actually speak, I took something off the consent agenda regarding her report, and so I'll speak to that at the time when I bring it back, and you'll hear why I did that. I was thinking she would be here to explain what they did. So hopefully we'll get her next meeting. She's here. Which brings us now to presentations, and we have one, and it's updates from the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District by Tim Dillon. There's Tim right there. And you have 10 minutes.
So, good evening, everyone. Tim Dillon, Executive Director, Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District. I appreciate having the opportunity to come and visit. This is one of 4 presentations I normally make for each of the different council members during the year. I try and come quarterly to kind of bring everybody up to date. Since we have a couple of new folks around the room that haven't heard my spiel, I want to make sure that you know we work on the entire Kenai Peninsula Borough. And as I was asked earlier about whether my phone was a state-issued phone or not, I am not government. We are a private organization. Councilmember DeMoss is actually on my board of directors. So is Jeff Hetrick here in town. So we have members of our board from all over the entire Kenai Peninsula. Our overview is we're a private, non-government resource. No one ever pays for our services. We focus on the responsible and sustainable economic development for the region. We use a 30,000-foot view of the economy. We help locate financing. We orchestrate community collaboration. We do a variety of different things. We assist with infrastructure projects, workforce development, regional industries. We are funded through contracts. We don't get any handouts. Every one of our contracts has a list of deliverables. So, for example, we have a contract because of Title 29, the Kenai Peninsula Borough does not handle its economic development responsibilities. They have a contract with us to handle all that. So that's an overview of what we do. We have a staff of 4 people, and the reason I bring this up is to make sure you know that we're not huge. We have myself, and then we have Caitlin Corson, who's our program manager. She's based at our Kenai offices. We actually own a 30-acre facility in Kenai. We have 9 businesses that we're currently incubating, and that facility we own free and clear. Cassidy Cameron is our special projects manager. She is based in Soldovia. She handles a variety of different things. Some of you might recognize her. She was the city manager in Soldovia, and then we hired her away from the city back 3 years ago as we started to work towards our transition. And then Abby Dial, who is our research assistant, we're very pleased to announce just was accepted. In fact, I don't know if even Councilmember DeMoss knows this, but she was accepted to go study at Oxford come January. She works 3/4 time during the school year, and she's finishing up her degree at Northwest Nazarene, but she did just get accepted to Oxford, which we're very, very excited for her. But one of the reasons why we have this here is, several of you probably know this already, But 6 months ago today, I actually was on an operating table because I had an issue with my heart. And I've been in recovery since then, and I am stepping down as the executive director as of the end of December. I'm going to continue to have an office there, and I'm going to continue to have a presence, but it will not be as the executive director. It'll be more on the part-time special projects. They keep teasing me that I'm going to be their human Rolodex on different things. But Cassidy Cameron, in all likelihood, will be the next executive director, and anybody that's familiar with AML probably knows Cassidy pretty well. She's very well liked, and she's awesome. She'll do a great job for us. So, a couple of the big things we're working on right now. Everybody talks about workforce, and we talked for a couple of minutes about this in the previous meeting, but realistically, workforce is a three-legged stool that we're all dealing with right now. Housing, transportation, and childcare are really the keys to how we get our workforce back where we need them to be. That doesn't mean it's going to be pre-COVID numbers, but those are the three issues that we're all working on. And I can tell you, whether it be here in Seward, in Homer, Ninilchik, or any place in between, these are the three things that we're working on. Different housing opportunities, transportation. We actually are working with CARTS to try and put together a transportation package that would include the entire Kenai Peninsula, and also childcare. With a variety of the things that have come out of post-COVID, it makes it very, very difficult for anybody in their right mind to start a child care business. Anybody that's a business person would look at the numbers and say there's no way to make this work. So we are trying to assist with that, whether it be on the legislative side, the policy side, a variety of different areas. But again, when somebody starts complaining about workforce, and whether it's an hourly employee or a senior level executive, these are the three things that come to mind that they have to be concerned about. Our biggest project we're working on right now is us and our four partners received $49 million to develop mariculture in the state of Alaska. Our goal is within the next 10 years that mariculture will be a $100 million a year revenue stream for the state of Alaska. There's a variety of ways of how we're going to get there. One of the reasons I was here again today was to meet with Jeff Hedrick. We were working very closely with Aluktik Pride, and if you haven't been to their facility, take the time to go over there and see what they're doing. They're doing some really cool things, not only here, but also in places like Nanwalek and Port Graham. So we have 7 different pieces to the whole project. We've got a revolving loan program. As most of you probably know, when it comes to mariculture, one of the things when you're going for a loan is you have to have collateral. It's very difficult to come up with collateral. Nobody wants you to bring you a bucket of clams and say that's your collateral. So what we're trying to do is backfill loans. Working on workforce, research, marketing, all sorts of different pieces to the mariculture piece. And one thing before I get off this, we've already helped place 2 different contracts over here with staff members to assist with the mariculture piece. The other part that we're working on, and one of the things that Jeff and I we're actually meeting about today, is we're working on equipment that we can get, because the Kenai Peninsula, we want to make sure that, I respect what they're getting in Southeast or what they want in Southeast or Southwest or Prince William Sound, but I want to make sure that the Kenai Peninsula gets what they need. So we're working on a FLUPSI to be able to get a FLUPSI, which that's what takes the seed and puts it to a level where the oysters can then be put in the oyster cages. And that's around a $750,000 piece of machinery or a piece of equipment. Metal oyster cages, DEC kitchens and processing, portable ones, a nursery, and potentially some warehouse and storage. So we're working on some bricks and mortar that will go with this, so that 5 years from now, and somebody says, what the hell did you do with that $49 million? We'll at least have some bricks and mortar that we can look at and say, this is what we've got. And these are the kinds of things that farmers are asking us for. This is what they need help with. So that's why we're pushing forward with that. The Alaska Long Trail, I've spoken to you all about this before. You know, we've got some money for this next year. It's going to go from right down the road from here, right over by the Sea Life Center, all the way up to the middle of the state of Alaska. Our goal is for it to be a 500-plus trail that's going to basically rival the Appalachian Trail. That's what, we've heard a lot about over the last 4 or 5 years, and we've been developing piece by piece. A lot of what we have already we're going to use, but a lot of the infrastructure still has to be made. We need parking areas, we need restrooms, things of that nature, areas to be able to get people in and out of and all. But the Alaska Long Trail is a project that we're spending a lot of time with. Rustic Roots. If you haven't gotten a chance to go down the road and see the bus that is now occupying space, we do a lot of small loans. We do loans for whether it be brand new businesses or experienced businesses. Genevieve came to us back around 3.5, 4 months ago, and I can tell you, out of all the loan packages I've ever looked at in my 8-9 years at CAPED, her loan package was one of the top 3 that I've ever seen. So we have gone ahead and funded them, and they're off and running. In fact, their first opening day was the Mermaid Weekend, and they actually sold out, which is awesome. So they now have the additional dollars to be able to purchase more things, but this is something that we feel very, very strongly about, is to helping people. And I'm going to tell you, we have met with people over and over again here in Seward, but no one's ever followed through to fill out the application and all. We've got, I want to say we have 4 loans out there around the peninsula right now. This is the first one in my tenure that we've done over in Seward, so I'm really pleased with it. And on that note, thank you all very much. I appreciate the opportunity to come and visit with you, and be more than happy to answer any questions.
That was amazing timing. I love it.
After all these years, I'm getting good at it.
Are there questions for Mr. Dillon? Well, thank you so much.
One closing comment is that I promise in the fall, probably in the October timeframe, I will come and do my quarterly as my last quarterly for you all, and I will bring the new executive director with me so that you all have the opportunity to meet her. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, so that brings us to public hearings. And we have one ordinance for enactment tonight. That will be our first public hearing. It's ordinance 2023-015. Ask the clerk to please read this for the record.
For enactment tonight, ordinance 2023-015, amending Seward City Code Title VI, Purchasing, Contracts, and Professional Services.
Okay, we introduced this on May 22nd. Tonight it's up for public hearing. I would ask for a motion and a second.
I'll move for the enactment of ordinance 2023-015.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Before the public hearing, I'd like Acting City Manager Regis to speak to this.
Yes, Madam Mayor, we're asking you, I would actually postpone this till the July 10th meeting. We found some errors in there, we want to correct them before we bring it back to you, so we're just asking if you want to postpone this to the July 10th meeting. I think we can have it done before the July 10th meeting, meet all the requirements. We found some errors and we just want to correct them.
Okay. We'll discuss that after the public hearing, I believe, unless there's any other administrative stuff to say. Okay, I'll open the public hearing. This is on ordinance 2023-015. Is there anyone signed in for that?
Mayor McClure, there is no one signed in for public hearing on ordinance.
Okay, anyone wishing to speak to ordinance 2023-015? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. And discussion, we've heard from administration that we might need a motion to postpone until the next meeting. But
I was going to make the motion to postpone this to the July 10th meeting.
July 10th?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and it was seconded by Councilmember Wells. Is there discussion about that? The motion to postpone? Okay, then I think we're ready to vote on that. When you're ready, Madam Clerk.
I'm sorry, Mayor McClure,
Okay.
was that an amendment to the original motion? To open? Okay.
The motion was
So there's a second motion.
postpone.
Okay. Motion to
Correct?
postpone.
There's two.
There's the motion to enact.
Correct.
So do,
We need to vote on the motion to enact first. Unless
If we
we're
vote on
amending
the-
the motion to enact.
okay. I'm not familiar with that, but do you want to restate your motion?
Well, it wasn't my motion, but
I mean-
my question would be, does the motion have to be rescinded so that we can vote on the original motion?
Yes, Mr.
Madam Mayor,
City Manager.
I believe you can vote on the motion to postpone.
I thought so.
Correct.
Yeah. We were just postponing,
Because we had a discussion on the thing, and that's when I brought up about the errors and
Right.
requesting them.
rather than completely fail.
Correct, but
the
there was a motion
ordinance.
to enact first.
We're not going to enact it, so if
Okay.
they vote no, then we.
If you vote no, then
I-
you fail the
Right.
ordinance.
I believe the person who brought up the motion to enact can withdraw the motion. Attorney,
Okay.
give your opinion.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Vice Mayor.
Is it my understanding that we did make a motion to enact, but that means it's on the floor? We actually asked to postpone.
Okay.
So the next time we bring this July 10th, it'll still be open on the floor. We're just postponing it from now until July 10th.
Understood.
That's how I
Okay.
see it. Thank you for that.
Can I get who did that motion and the second for that?
The motion was
Osenga
Vice
and Wells,
Mayor
thank you.
Osenga, and the second was Councilmember Wells.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so we are ready to vote on the motion to postpone.
Motion to postpone until
July
July
10th.
10th. Thank you for your patience.
That's fine.
Councilmember Finch.
Yes.
Councilmember Barnwell.
Yes.
Councilmember Demas.
Yes.
Councilmember Calhoun.
Yes.
Councilmember Osenga.
Yes.
Councilmember Wells.
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Your motion to postpone is unanimous.
Okay, thank you. Moving along, we have two resolutions requiring a public hearing. The first one is Resolution 2023-068, and it is on page 120 of the packet, if anyone wants to see it. And would the clerk please read the title in?
Resolution 2023-068, updating the municipal lands inventory and management plan to include recommendations to improve and designate parking and access to the 4th of July beach and plot the area into one parcel and rezone to park.
Okay, thank you. Administration, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, Madam
Oh,
Mayor.
wait, I need a motion.
No.
I'm sorry. I need a motion to approve in a second, please.
I'll make the motion to approve Resolution 2023-068.
I'll second.
Okay, so Vice Mayor Osenga moved and Councilmember Demas seconded. Now, administration, would you like to speak to this, please?
Madam Mayor, Director Binkley will talk to him.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. So this is actually the first of two planning and zoning recommendations for adoption in the Muni Land Plan. We are going to be doing our overall annual update in September for kind of the smaller updates and housekeeping items, but this resolution and the next one are being brought to council kind of outside that process for a few different reasons. Both of these recommendations, if put into action down the road, would require funds and resources that the council would eventually need to approve. Like things like replatting actions, gravel signage, staff plans, those things. Adoption of this resolution would also give us permission to have discussions with other property owners, adjacent property owners, and give us permissions around those things. And both this one and the next one are kind of both properties that are very high value to our community. And so we also, that's another reason we kind of want to bring that outside and have this more of an open discussion instead of being lost in this kind of 200-page document that the Muni Land Plan is. So, on this one specifically, the commission believes that the 4th of July Beach is an important community resource and wants to make recommendations for that plan that would maintain and or improve public access and usability of this area for the future. So the specific items on this recommendation include a replat, which basically is defining like a new boundary for the area because there are multiple parcels in there. And so it kind of clean things up and just make it one defined space. The recommendation is to then rezone that area to park, which is kind of obviously a protective measure around that. Another part of the recommendation is to improve the current parking area to make it accessible in all seasons. As we know, that fills with water and it turns into ice and it's hard to access even if you have two really good legs and cleats and whatnot. And also just for all users, including those with disabilities. So it is a pretty difficult area to access for those people, for many people. Part of the other recommendation is to provide for additional parking as the current is fairly limited there and most people park up there on the right-of-way. And then also just improved signage for people how to get there and where to park and those types of items. So, and again, the approval of this resolution does not take any action itself, but is adopting the planning and zoning recommendation into the plan for possible future action.
Thank you. Do you have anything further to add, Mr. Regis?
Madam Mayor, I do not, I know just as part of this thing where the harbor was already working on where it says raise the level of that parking area, we're currently starting to work on that process, starting to haul fill in there. So that's part of, we're already doing that part, but this is definitely be helpful for everything there. So.
Okay. With that, I'll open the public hearing for Resolution 2023-068. Madam Clerk, is anyone signed in?
Mayor McClure, we do have Carol Griswold inside city limits.
Okay. With public hearings, you are allowed 5 minutes.
Thank you. Carol Griswold inside city limits. I am very excited for this opportunity to preserve and protect 4th of July Beach for the public's recreational use. Many thousands of footprints along the beach over the decades demonstrate public support for this park. Locals and visitors, beachcombers, dog walkers, families with kids, wildlife watchers, birders, photographers, kayakers, paddleboarders, kite sailors, surfers, fishers, and even a few hardy swimmers enjoy this beautiful beach, adjacent waters, and the surrounding spectacular scenery year-round. As the adjacent Seward Breed Industrial Center continues to develop, it is even more critical to protect what the public perceives as park by replatting and rezoning. Retaining and providing adequate year-round parking is also critical to accommodate park users and to avoid conflicts with other users. Designated uplands parking for more vehicles and RVs is needed. The vegetative buffer of native trees and shrubs between the beach and uplands is essential to provide a visual screen and reduce noise from the shipyard, trap litter before it goes into the ocean, and provide shelter, food, and nesting habitat for birds and other wildlife. I commend the Community Development Department and the Planning and Zoning Commission for recognizing the importance of protecting 4th of July Beach as a park in support of the public, the comp plan, and the municipal land use plan. Please vote yes to approve Resolution 2023-068. Thank you.
Thank you. Has anyone else signed in?
No one else has signed in.
Okay. Is there anyone else out there that would like to speak to this particular resolution? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Finch.
I'd like to give a short synopsis of what Jason Binkley was saying, because some of the public was freaking out about we were taking it away. The goal here is to turn this into a park, make better parking, more accessibility, to provide more, not take away like some people were jumping to. I fully support what we're doing here.
Thank you for that clarification. I was going to say something similar, so. Any other discussion? I believe we're ready to vote. Madam Clerk?
Voting on approving Resolution 2023-068. Councilmember Finch.
Yes.
Councilmember Osenga.
Yes.
Councilmember Calhoun.
Yes.
Councilmember Wells.
Yes.
Councilmember Barnwell.
Yes.
Councilmember DeMoss.
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Vote is unanimous. Resolution passed.
Okay, thank you. Next, and similarly, we have a public hearing on Resolution 2023-069. And when you're ready, could you please read the title in?
Resolution 2023-069, updating the municipal lands inventory and management plan to include recommendations to increase day-use parking at Spring Creek Campground, request an easement to maintain beach access to the north of the campground, and plot the area into one parcel and rezone to park.
Okay, thank you. And this is on page 134 of the packet, if anyone wants to follow along. Administration.
Madam Mayor, please.
Oh, I need the motion and a second first. I wrote it down. I'd like a motion to approve and a second.
I'll move to approve Resolution 2023-069.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and second. Now administration. And did you get who that was?
I did not get the second.
That was a second.
Thank you.
Councilmember Wells.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. Just again, so the commission also believes that in that same area, Spring Creek is also a very important community resource. And just for making recommendations to improve public access and usability of the area. On this one, this one's a little bit different because in looking at it, you can see there's actually a lot of people that use that area are trespassing on private property. And so by approving this would at least allow us to go out and have a conversation with those private property owners about looking at an easement, or maybe even like if the city would be willing to like purchase that area in there, because right now there are there are trespassing on a lot of the users that fish there. And so and it's a public resource, but we do want to be able to engage those owners in that. And again, the recommendation would be to replat, rezone this and park, improve parking access for all users, and just some better signage for the day use in that area.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else to add, Mr. Regis?
I don't have anything now.
Okay, I will open the public hearing on Resolution 2023-069. Is anyone signed up for this?
Mayor McClure, Carol Griswold, inside city limits is.
Carol Griswold, inside city limits. Spring Creek Campground is the only city campground on the east side of the bay and provides much-needed day use and overnight camping. The views of the surrounding snow-capped mountains and Cirque glaciers, Resurrection Bay, and Seward across the bay are spectacular. It is bordered on the north by a salmon stream, wetlands, and pond. This incredible ecosystem provides productive habitat for salmon spawning, rearing, and passage, for nesting birds including songbirds, ducks, and eagles, for migratory birds and other wildlife. It is bordered to the west by Resurrection Bay, providing easy access for shore fishing and beach activities. Thus, it is particularly popular with fishers and their families, starting in late May through the end of the summer. These visitors buy groceries, gas, fishing licenses, gear, and other supplies in town, and visit tourist attractions, restaurants, and shops. The city supports this rustic campground by providing porta potties and dumpsters in the summer. Winter use is limited as the city no longer maintains access with a plow. The campground used to be twice the current size until a chain link fence bisected it to the south. As the adjacent Seward Marine Industrial Center continues to develop, it is critical to protect and preserve the remaining city uplands and beach for the public. I recommend a small change to the graphic on page 140. The replat should include the city-owned beach up to the rock embankment by extending the north border straight across. This would make what the public considers to be Spring Creek Beach complete and official. Please amend the resolution to include this change in the graphic and replat. Please vote yes to approve Resolution 2023-069 by replatting, rezoning, and renaming to Spring Creek Park and Campground in support of the public, the comp plan, and the municipal land use plan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Has anyone else signed in?
No one else has signed in.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak on this resolution? Okay, hearing none, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Any discussion from council? Vice Mayor Osenga.
I just wanted to ask about, I'm assuming that Ms. Griswold was talking about this, create an easement on this lot here where this line is red on the graph. Just want to reiterate, that is a privately owned section.
Correct.
That's private property, so we didn't make a mistake there. That's
Correct.
actually private property.
So, Jason talked about reaching out to the
Right,
owners to see,
right.
yeah.
So that's the plan then, would be to reach out to the person that owns this sliver of land here, which is the beach.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And this is yes.
Would it be acceptable to suspend the rules to allow the citizen to interact? I think there might be a dialogue might help.
Sure.
Would we be okay with that?
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
I didn't bring a map, but on the north side, this is that rock jetty that goes across, and then the sawdust mill is there. So on your map on page 140.
May I make a request?
I see you.
It just goes like that.
I see it.
And this is all city property.
I see that.
So just make that line go straight across, because if it's a north wind, that's a great place to sit. And that should be part of the park.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make a request before you sit down?
Okay.
And thank you for always being so detailed and helpful for all of us. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your input on a regular basis. Councilmember Finch has the map right there, and although I appreciate your drawing, would you mind showing us?
Because
It's pretty crude.
I have a different idea, I'd like to extend it.
Just
Draw
Yes.
it, draw it.
if that's okay. I guess I should have asked that. I apologize. I apologize, Madam
Well,
Mayor.
that was.
Okay, hold on. We've suspended the rules to allow that interaction. Can we go back on regular time now? Okay. Councilmember Finch.
Yes, the city owns these two parcels here. Why don't we just extend that whole beach? Because everybody walks around there for fishing and enjoying. Go ahead.
Yeah, city.
Madam Mayor, so the other is an industrial zone that the people they're coming up, and they actually have that section leased.
Oh, okay.
So that
But
is
that does stop at the rock breakwater that Ms. Griswold was talking about.
I see.
Okay. So, oops, that's okay.
What Ms. Griswold's talking about is the tree line right there. See how we're pointed? It's just making it straight across.
I'd like to ask if that's an acceptable thing from both the city manager or Jason.
You were saying,
Yeah, so,
you're saying that that's part of the lease right now currently?
no, not up to the rock, not that I know of. Here, Jason.
Or, since this is a kind of a ongoing
So
thing,
like-
maybe that could be just added in. at a
So is this
later
part of their
time.
lease, this section here?
We'd have to look into that.
So we'll have to look into see if that's part of the lease, but I know that lease has gone, yeah, it's gone back quite a ways. And,
Okay, so would it be better to keep it as it is and then modify it later? Or Mr. Bickling, do you, wait,
What we could do is they could adopt this as it currently is right now, and then part of when we do our cleanup in the fall, like September, and we do that back around, this will be one of those items that we follow up
That's
on.
what I was gonna-
And we'll bring that back before you again and give you some more information so you can choose that.
I think that would be personally, I think that's the best way, because then we won't err on the side of doing something that wouldn't work. Is that acceptable? Okay, thank you. Having dealt with that, is there any more discussion about this particular resolution? Okay, hearing none, I believe we are ready to vote. Madam Clerk?
For the approval of Resolution 2023-069, Councilmember Osenga,
Yes.
Councilmember Finch,
Yes.
Councilmember Barnwell,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMoss?
Yes.
Councilmember Calhoun?
Yes.
Councilmember Wells?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
Mayor McClure, your vote is unanimous.
Okay, thank you.
Resolution passes.
Thank you very much. I'll ask at this point if anyone needs a break, or should we continue on? We're okay? Okay. We're up to unfinished business. We have resolution 2023-046. And City Manager Regis.
Madam Mayor, this is another one that, since we're going forward with some interviews, that maybe postpone this to the July 10th meeting. We should know something by then. If we have to postpone it again, we can postpone it. That way, it'll be, so just saying, if you fail, you can't touch it for 90 days. So that's why I'm suggesting a postponement to July 10th.
Okay, I would have asked that after we
Oh, I'm sorry.
get it read, but that's
Okay.
okay. We all do this tonight. Madam Clerk, would you please read this for the record? The title.
Yes, ma'am. Resolution 2023-046, authorizing the city manager to enter into a recruitment services contract with GovHR in the amount of $30,000 and appropriating funds. This resolution was postponed from April 24th.
Okay, which means we've already moved and seconded on this, so we don't need to do that again. Now, administration, do you have a recommendation?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to recommend that you postpone this resolution until the July 10th meeting. By that time, you should know whether you're going to go back out or you're going to hire a city manager.
And this is based on the fact that we have decided to interview the 5 candidates coming up.
Correct.
So, okay. We need a motion, though, to postpone and a second.
I'll make a motion to postpone 2023-046 until the July 10th meeting.
I'll second.
Okay, so it was moved by Vice Mayor Osenga and seconded by Councilmember DeMoss to postpone until July 10th. Is there any discussion on that motion? Okay, I think we're ready to vote on the postponement.
Postponing resolution 046 until July 10th. Councilmember Barnwell?
Yes.
Councilmember Wells?
Yes.
Councilmember Finch?
Yes.
Councilmember Osenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Calhoun?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMoss?
Yes.
And Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Mayor McClure, unanimous vote.
Okay, thank you. Now we have the, in new business, B, action memoranda, the item I took off the consent agenda and moved over to this time, and it is action memorandum 2023-006. I think I'll just read it's opposing the KPP ordinance 2023-11. And you can find this on page 92 of the packet. I'm not sure if I need a motion before I describe this. Do we need a motion to get it on the floor?
I believe so, just like any other.
So it would be a motion to approve in a second, please.
A motion to approve resolution 2023-11?
No, it's an amendment.
006.
006.
Are you
I'll
talking
second
about the
that.
action memorandum?
I'm sorry?
Oh,
It's a motion to approve action memorandum.
2023-006.
Yes. And I second.
Okay. It was moved by Councilmember DeMoss and seconded by Vice Mayor Osenga. So let me explain, since I took this off, and I was hoping that our Borough Assembly rep would be here. The original reason for this was to oppose the removal of our Kenai Peninsula Borough Planning Commission seat, the Seward seat. There was an ordinance on the part of the Assembly to reorganize, and it would cause the removal of the Seward seat. We didn't get anything into them, this particular opposition letter, in a timely manner, which is neither here nor there, because the plan was to postpone anyway, so we could have put this letter in. But what happened was, I believe it was Assemblymember Cox, came up with a brilliant amendment, a total rework of this, and we will keep our seat. And the details of which I don't have in front of me, because I was sure Cindy would be here to tell, but rest assured, things will stay the same for Seward, that we'll still have our Borough Planning Commission seat. So my recommendation is, since we have it on the floor, to vote no on this and fail this because it's a moot point. The action has been taken in our favor anyway. Does that make sense? It would have made more sense if Cindy had been here to give us all the details, but is that okay with everyone? All right. So is there any discussion about that? Okay, Madam Clerk, we're ready to vote on the motion to approve Action Memorandum 2023-006.
Councilmember DeMoss?
Yes.
No.
Does
that work?
Councilmember Calhoun?
No.
Councilmember Finch?
No.
Councilmember Osenga?
No.
Councilmember Wells?
No.
Councilmember Barnwell?
No.
Mayor McClure?
No.
Mayor McClure, you have 7 noes. Motion fails.
Okay, thank you. Just for the public, things have to be made in the positive. Motions do have to be made in the positive. And it's really hard for us sitting here. It's obvious. It's hard for us to vote no. It's really hard. Okay. So now we're down to, I believe, other new business. And the first item on that is entitled, "The Future of the City Seward Electric Utility." And you can find some information on page 176 of the packet. And this is a discussion, and so we have Rob here to give us some stuff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. Before I get into the slides, I do want to read a statement into the record. With nearly 25 years of experience in the electric utility industry, interacting with industry professionals and experts from trade associations and utilities of all sizes, I have developed a good understanding of the expertise and resources it takes to effectively operate an electric utility. And one thing I know for certain, Seward's electric utility is not built to effectively operate in today's rapidly changing industry. Seward simply lacks the resources, expertise, and financial resources to be successful. While I'm proud of what we're accomplishing in Seward, cleaning up rights-of-way, providing interconnect capability for solar customers, taking steps to overhaul electric billing functions, and working to rebuild neglected parts of our transmission system, we're still not positioned for long-term energy security. We're facing great challenges on many fronts: technology and cybersecurity, rate stability, a lack of in-house expertise, and perhaps the most important, financial health. To that end, I'm meeting this week with our rates consulting firm to begin our 2023 rate study, a study that will determine how much rates must be raised later this year. I expect the increase will be fairly significant, placing additional financial hardship on those who live and work here. Most people realize, outside of safety, the most important responsibility of an electric utility is to keep the lights on. And yes, having qualified linemen and plant operators are critical to achieving this goal. Thankfully, in this area of our utility, we are fully staffed, though an additional lineman's position is becoming increasingly necessary. But what about the business and management side of running a utility? Functions that fall outside of the expertise of the linemen and plant operators. These key functional areas include, but are not limited to, budget development and management, rate design and implementation, customer relations and customer complaint resolution, union negotiations and employee grievance resolution, power supply negotiations, employee and customer communications, as well as overall public information. And then there's the many interactions and communications necessary to keep city administration and you our city council informed of our activities. This work includes the drafting of resolutions, agenda statements, project updates, as well as other written materials. And let's not forget the importance of regularly engaging at a state level with the other railroad utilities and trade associations to stay current on the many state and federal issues and mandates affecting Alaska's utilities. You see, all of these functions are important to effectively operate in today's environment. Needless to say, most other utilities have the resources to adequately manage these functions. Not so for Seward. Sadly, for our city, the cost to own and maintain the utility are increasing, and there's only a small number of meters, approximately 2,900, for bringing in revenue. And while the possibility of future cruise ship power exists, though is not guaranteed, projections show that it will only offset a portion of the escalating expenses the utility is facing. The bottom line is, and I've said this before, Seward's utility is at a critical point if it's to successfully meet future and state obligations, continue to properly invest in its system, keep rates competitive, and provide its customers with the programs and services they deserve. Unfortunately, options to do all of these things are limited, so I will outline those for you now. Let's start by taking a look at the utility's current status. Despite a clear majority of people voting in favor of selling the utility on May 2nd, the ballot narrowly failed. But the election's outcome does not change the utility's many challenges. Rates will continue to escalate. Staffing limitations as well as limited in-house expertise are reality. Very few programs and services are being offered to our customers today, and our salaries for non-union positions are non-competitive. It makes it very difficult for the utility to attract and maintain qualified employees. So, where does the utility go from here? In this presentation, I've outlined 4 different options. Option 1 is do nothing. From my perspective, since the utility will continue to lack the financial and human resources and the in-house expertise, it's not really realistic for us to go there. The city will also continue to struggle to fund large capital investments or maintenance projects. And ultimately, what impact will this have on the Electric Enterprise Fund? And with the limited opportunities for growing the utility's revenue base, there will be no clear solution for long-term rate stabilization. And, you know, doing nothing, I'm not sure that the utility would survive for very long if we do nothing. So something does have to be done. I would say option 1 is not realistic. Option 2 is for this solution, it's rebuilding the utility. I have mapped out minimum staffing needs, and I would say we need a minimum of 4 to 6 positions. Most of these are non-union. In fact, there's only, out of the 4 to 6, there's only 1 position that I've outlined as being union. Of course, this will have a significant impact on compensation in the electric department, and so that we can make the wages competitive. And of course, this would require the city to obviously restructure its whole wage structure, and I'm not sure how reasonable that is. And these costs, at the end of the day, do go into customer rates, and they will or could potentially also affect the contribution to the general fund that electric is currently making. My guess is it would take about 18 months, a minimum, to complete by the time you change the city's wage structure, draft job descriptions, get everything posted, and get the position hired. But then if you look at the last bullet, even if we do all these things, we still have a housing problem here in Seward. would we have a place for our new employees if we did bring them in? Option 3, we could outsource the various services of Seward's electric utility to another utility or firm. And this comes with its own challenges. We would need to work with the union on separation of responsibilities. And in my experience, this would prove difficult. If outsourced to another utility, there would be regulatory restrictions. And again, I think this is something that would be difficult to work through. Could be done, but I think it would take a lot of work. At the end of the day, we also need to know, based upon those factors, how long would it take? And it would take months just to work through the logistical details. Ultimately, then there's the cost to the city and the impact to customer rates for outsourcing. There would be a cost associated with this. Do I see this as being a solution, maybe a temporary solution, but I certainly don't see it being a permanent solution. It may be a stopgap measure. Option 4 is to place or revisit the option of selling the electric utility. When we look back at May 2nd, the vote was widely supported in favor of selling. It was 19 percentage points. The 60% threshold was difficult to overcome, but in most elections, if you look at a 19 percentage point advantage, it's usually a landslide. By merging with the larger utility, you would provide the increased financial security and long-term rate stability that we're currently lacking. It would address the challenges of staffing, in-house expertise, and the availability of programs and services. And the city would no longer have to worry about finding and retaining qualified employees for the electric utility. And at that point, worrying about competitive wages would be a moot point as well. So the one downside to this option, like the other options, is it's not something that can be done quickly. To get it placed on another ballot in the future, you're talking several months. And to go through the regulatory process for approval, you're looking at probably 12 to 16 months to go through that. So that would be the one downside on this. I think as we look at the 4 options, and I've given this a lot of thought, and I'm not sure there are many other directions that we can go. But out of the 4 options, if you look at option 2, which is rebuild the utility, or option 4, which is to revisit the selling of the utility, I think those are the 2 most viable options. We can't stay where we are, and I'm not sure the answer is to outsource. And so with those 2 options before council, I think we have to ask ourselves what's in the best interest of the community. Again, we had a majority of the people in the city that voted to sell. They understand that by merging with a larger utility, there are many advantages for the city of Seward. So I think it's something that we really have to discuss and consider. So, yeah.
Okay, bringing it back to council. What could happen tonight is a motion and a second and a vote to direct administration to do something, right? I mean, that's what we can do, and prepare to do some actions. So we would be voting. What are the recommendations, or, yeah, Councilmember?
Question, Mr. Montgomery, on a couple of things.
Oh, yeah, I believe, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Can you be specific about what those 4 to 6 positions would be if we were to, say, take option 2?
What's that? I have in the org chart. Would it be okay if I passed it out?
Oh, I believe, yeah. You have copies?
I think so.
Does it have to go through the city clerk to us?
It should.
Yeah, go to her now.
Yeah, would you hand it to the clerk?
I will do that.
That's how it's supposed to go.
Sorry.
Thank you.
It doesn't always, I
give
know
me a
it
copy
often
too?
starts over here.
There should be enough. If not, I got a few more.
You can share too.
Well, I'll keep passing it.
Oh, this should be plenty, actually.
Give one to the audience. Rob, could we give one to the audience?
Okay, we're good.
Would, Councilmember Barnwell, would you like him to, or Rob to speak about these positions or anything?
Yeah, if you would.
Well, we've got it in front of us then?
Could I borrow a copy?
You can borrow mine.
You're supposed to have that in your
That's
hand.
good. I can share. I can share.
They can share.
Thank you.
Yeah, if you look at the bottom, I've added some notes. This particular structure would add 5 additional positions. Those positions would be an additional lineman. If you look to the far left, that +1. Underneath the general manager, there's also a rail belt position. We do a tremendous amount of work at the state level, and we are challenged regularly with managing that process. If you look to the far right, there is a business operations manager, as well as a customer relations and communications position, and also a cybersecurity and IT position. I put it on this org chart. Something we've talked about in past meetings is possibly outsourcing the IT and cybersecurity work. With the addition of the 5 positions and the increased salaries for the existing non-union positions in the department, you're looking at an increase of about $800,000 to $850,000 in salaries. That does not include benefits. That is to be industry competitive, which we are not today. So for us to have the ability to actually attract employees to Seward and then retain those employees, those are the type of numbers we're talking about. And I know those are some pretty big numbers.
Councilmember Barnwell.
I just want to make clear that it isn't just for me also, it's just for the public, just to clarify on this. So obviously the general manager, would the salary of the general manager have to be increased also?
Correct.
So that 800 figure?
That is included.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Thrall was here last month, or last meeting, and indicated that that some infrastructure needs have been satisfied to some degree, and that we don't have that many more infrastructure needs.
From a transmission perspective, he is correct. Once we get Nash Road completed, once we get our 3 substations rebuilt, which is part of the process that we're going through currently, the transmission part of our system will be in pretty good shape. But we still have a great deal of work to do on the distribution part. If you look at our lines and our poles and our equipment within the city and in the alleyways and on the streets, we still have a lot of work. A lot of our underground cable around the city and subdivisions, old, deteriorating, needs to be replaced. So as of right now, while we have the $10 million bond that we have out already, we're also looking, as I've said before, to go into our enterprise fund for an additional $4 to $5 million to complete Nash Road and to complete the rebuild of our 2 substations. For us to move forward and complete our 3rd substation, as well as begin addressing some of the underground cable and other projects you would be looking at probably taking out a second revenue bond. Okay, 7 to 8 million.
One more, sorry.
Sure.
One more follow-up. There are a lot of smaller utilities in the state of Alaska, right?
Correct.
No, Kotzebue, for instance, Kotzebue, I think they just had a listener report where they're gonna be up to 60% alternative energy in their system.
Sure.
Why is it that Seward can't remain autonomous, independent, and some of these smaller towns in Alaska can?
Yeah.
What's the difference?
We can, but again, it's going to take great change, and I think you're talking about restructuring. What makes us different in many cases is that we're connected to the larger grid, along with the other railbelt utilities. So from that standpoint, we are a part owner of the Bradley Lake Hydro Project. We have a seat at the table with the other electric utilities on the railbelt. Our rates, the work that we do, it's compared to those other utilities. We're competing in the same marketplace for employees. We currently do not compete in that area. So for us to stay independent, we just have to do things differently. And you've heard me say it here before, what we would have to do is completely rebuild, in a sense, our utility so that we're adding these resources. With the changes we've got coming in the industry, it's not only going to affect regulated utilities like Homer and Chugach, but it's going to affect Seward. And we do not have the in-house expertise to manage all of these different functions. Today, all of the functions that I read in our statement basically are handled by 2 people in our department. It's unacceptable. So if we're going to survive, and if we want to grow, and if we want to add the programs and services that many of our customers either come into the office and ask for or call, then we need to, again, add staffing, add expertise, and do things differently. If you're a Ketchikan and you're isolated, you're an islanded system, you're not put through the same requirements necessarily that we are simply by being connected to the larger grid. And again, because we are competing with those other utilities for employees and talent, it's difficult.
Councilmember Wells.
In your expert opinion, I see that we need all these additional extremely important positions. Is there anyone who's currently employed in your department that could possibly be promoted to these positions to a higher pay, and then their less pay, we could hire somebody to fill those positions? Is there anybody in the department, I guess, first of all, that can fill any of these positions?
Well, keep in mind that we're currently down 1 person. 7 of our positions that are filled are operations focused. So it would be difficult for any of those people to fill the positions that are on the right-hand side of this graph. Now, the system operations manager, absolutely. We would have people qualified to move into that role. To date, when we've had a supervisor's role, which is a similar position, this is elevated because we need someone who has the capability of writing reports and doing other things. No one has shown interest. They have preferred to stay working with the line crew or working in the field and not being in the office as much.
Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome.
Councilmember Calvin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question's more, I think, attorney-based. For a minute, do we know if we were to choose option 4 and go in that direction, time periods that we would be required to wait since the last election any additional RFP requirements or anything like that that would be necessary were we to decide to place this on a future ballot? Or would we have the option just to place it on a future ballot?
There's no legal restriction on when you could bring back a similar or identical ballot question in this particular context, which was a charter provision that required, voter approval. So there is no, state law restriction on putting something similar on a Seward election ballot itself. But this was a very specific agreement between the city of Seward and Homer Electric. So certainly it would, and that agreement was keyed very specifically to a May 2, 2023 election. So it's certainly, a decision would have to be made about whether, we're revising that agreement to key it to a different election. And that would, Seward can't dictate that, Homer Electric would have to agree. And of course, the council could say, well, we're going to go back out to an RFP, we're going to go all the way back to the beginning, so to speak, if we're deciding to have another election.
But that wouldn't necessarily be a requirement.
No, it wouldn't be required because you had a competitive process and you selected a preferred buyer for your utility. You could decide that you were going to continue to negotiate with that buyer. You could decide that you interpret the vote as a rejection of that buyer, albeit by a minority of the electorate, and pivot, and say, well, we're going to open up negotiations with a second buyer. That would be a longer process, of course, because where we got with Homer Electric, we had a completed agreement. How much of that agreement would need to be modified would be kind of an open question. In some respects, perhaps not much, because it already had built into it provisions that accounted for changes in the economics between the end of 2022 and the date of regulatory approval to account for things such as the utility spending money on infrastructure upgrade. The price was going to automatically kind of adjust for that, so a lot of those pricing mechanisms could probably go forward without a huge amount of modification. Everyone would probably say, well, we need to look at all this in detail and make sure everyone understands it. If a time delay, whether we should reconfigure the starting point and in doing so reconfigure the base price. That would certainly be a possibility because you'd have more up-to-date financial information. At some point, if you change too much of an agreement that's gone through a competitive process, there's a fairly compelling argument that you need to go back out and start over because you've kind of moved the target. But I can't, in my mind, that's an unlikely conclusion because so much, everyone had the same financial information and they put in prices and proposals, based on that. But you could support, not going out to another RFP because you had done it once and selected somebody that you preferred. But you also could sit here and go, well, maybe we should, go out and do it all over again because that would, increase the chances of voter approval, something like that.
Did you have a follow-up?
Just one more follow-up, if I could. And it would be more of an election kind of thing. And how many days prior to the municipal election would we be required to make that resolution to add something to that?
Under your existing code, it's a 60-day deal, so if you backed up from the October, you would need a resolution to put it on, I think, in July.
Mr. Sewell?
Title 405020 states a resolution is required to place a proposition on the ballot for the voters and must be enacted at least 53 days or more before a regular election and 60 days or more before a special election.
So about 2 months. Okay, Councilmember West.
Thank you again, Rob. So, oh my goodness, did I just lose that? I apologize. I misplaced my question. I'm going to have to look it back up. I apologize.
Okay. Other comments? So one of the suggestions, you got it? Councilmember
Thank you.
West. I was going to
Thank you.
sort of fill in.
Lots of notes. Rob, so when putting together your presentation, which thank you again, it's extremely detailed, and outlining options 1, 2, 3, and 4, have you been in contact with HEA regarding option number 4? And if so, are they willing to change the date of the purchase agreement and wait for a special election? Or can you answer that question?
Right. No, when my last conversation with Homer about this process, of course, we had just come off the election. But we did discuss the future. Homer said that at that point in time, if we get to a point where the city of Seward looks again at potentially selling, that they still wanted to be a part of that process. And I've heard the same thing from Chugach as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Are we expected to make a decision tonight on this process? I know that was the hope, that we would give some direction, and we've all been thinking about it, but are we really, do we need maybe another couple weeks to consider what's been told tonight and formulate a plan to vote? Just throwing that out there. Councilmember West.
Thank you, Mayor. I believe one of the biggest issues that we had during the last election was the amount of time it took to put the proposal together and accept a contract, that the citizens may have felt that they didn't have enough time to gain the education and understanding of the sale, that they were, and also we heard that they were frustrated with the amount of executive sessions that we had done. We are past that point now. I believe this, if we're going to do this, the sooner we do it, in my opinion, hopefully tonight, the better, so that we can start addressing once again those questions and concerns in a much timelier manner before the special election. So I would propose that we make a decision tonight.
And that being said, does anyone have a motion that we could discuss? Councilmember DeMoss.
I don't have a motion, but I want to discuss the alternative of rebuilding the utility, and if we chose to work on that option, are we expected to start making those decisions right away? Is that how we would work that? Or, we talked about, Councilmember Barnwell suggested at the last meeting that we hand this over to PACAP and let them do some brainstorming. This isn't my expertise, and I've learned more about an electric utility than I ever thought I would. And I've been given every resource and opportunity and time. And So I just, and I still have questions and really, I don't know what the complete 100% right answer is. So I wonder if, as a body, if we want to throw this to another group of people and let them hash it out for a minute. Just throwing it out there.
Did you have something to say there?
Well, I mean, if you look at what I had in the presentation, you know, there are several steps with the city that would have to be taken. To go down this path, from an HR perspective, you have to identify the positions, which I've attempted to do. I've also done research on trying to put salary ranges with those positions. But you would have to get the structure approved by the city. You would have to change the wage structure of the city. And then going through the hiring process, and then the big caveat at the end was the housing. There are a number of things. It can be done. I think it's certainly an option the council needs to look at and consider. I think, as I had mentioned in the presentation, options 2, which is rebuild, and options 4, revisit selling, are your 2 most viable options today. But there are a number of steps that are going to require this taking some time. And the more time we take, the more the utility is going to struggle. And you know, the rate study that we have, my goal initially was to do the rate study and then implement an increase in January. Based on the escalating cost we're looking at with the infrastructure project, the overtime cost that we discussed earlier tonight, I would probably look to implement that in October, if possible.
Let me get Mr. Regis first.
Madam Mayor, Rob, can you also talk about Chugach increase that could be coming here shortly?
Yeah, Chugach, I think we mentioned in the past that they are going in for an electric rate increase as well. It's my understanding they plan to file with the Regulatory Commission of Alaska for their rate case before the end of this month. I have no clue what those numbers are. I think for the large customers like Seward, the numbers will probably be smaller than they will be for their residential customers. That comes back to the whole cost of service model. How much does it cost to serve each customer class? But again, I don't know what the numbers are. I do know they're filing by the end of this month, or at least that's what we've been told.
Okay, do you have a follow-up, Cindy, on that?
Yes, I have a follow-up. That's what we have called it.
Well,
I believe that even if we choose number 4, we can't ignore number 2. We can't just, oh, we're going to pick number 4, so we don't have to do anything. So I think regardless, we have to come up with a plan to rebuild the utility, whether it sells in the future or not, whether it sells in the near future or not. Do we want to take that on, or do we want to talk about, I mean, you know, we need to, I guess we need to accept the fact that we need to have a plan for rebuilding our utility and taking care of it as in this moment, and not just have our eye on this slice of pie that we didn't get one time and now we want to get again.
okay. Councilmember Wells.
I believe Councilmember Finch was it.
Councilmember Finch.
I'd like to add to that option 2, like Rob says, there's pay increase, staffing increase, and our notorious white elephant room housing. Option 2 is going to be a harder one to do, and everybody in this town is financially going to be taking a higher rate. You know, so you got pay increases, position increases, lack of housing, and rate increases. Is option 2 really viable?
Councilmember Wells.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Councilmember DeBoss. If we were to go back and look at the minutes during the leading up to the election process, more than once did I say we needed to inform the public on not just a ballpark figure, but as detailed of a cost to rebuild the utility as we could. And I think that was one key aspect that we got close to, but we didn't hit it on the head, and therefore, when we were speaking with citizens leading up to the election, like Councilmember Demas says, if we're gonna put this on the ballot, I absolutely believe that we have to explore option number 2, and we should crunch those numbers. We should appoint another board, such as PACAB, to work on this, but at the same time, we could also vote to put the sale of the utility on for the special election. But there's no reason why we can't work on option number 2 and educate ourselves and educate the public, which would be best before the public was to go and vote again, in my opinion.
Okay, one just came to me, PACAB doesn't meet in the summer. That's an issue, right off the top of that, but I agree. I mean, maybe okay. Councilmember Calhoun?
Madam Mayor, thank you. If we want to go that direction, and I don't think it's a bad direction to go, there could also be an ad hoc committee formed, since PACAB doesn't meet in the summer, if we want to do it, because we do have individuals in the community that are well-versed in a lot of these things. And so we probably could get an ad hoc committee put together. And just as a side note, if we wanted to put this on a ballot sooner than later, October would not be a special election. It would be a regular election. And we would have to decide that by August 8th meeting. Just as a side note for that. But I agree that, you know, we've got to widen our scope a little bit, because we do have to have a plan, as option 2 lays out. And I think having maybe an ad hoc committee that could delve into that, that's, I believe with ad hoc committees, they're still, you have to deal with open meeting things, but their scheduling and different things are a little different, and it can be people inside, outside the city, it can be a variety like that. So, because I've been learning, planning and zoning is looking at an ad hoc committee on some things, so that's kind of the direction that I see us maybe going. As far as putting it on a future ballot, that's not a decision that we have to make today. Or we could make a decision that that's what we want to do. We don't have to decide which future ballot that is right now. But then we could also decide to have an ad hoc committee formed to work on the option 2 portion, which would help give us all that information that we're all going to need if we decide to go on a ballot in the future anyway.
Okay. Let me get Councilmember Finch, and I'll go back to you.
Commissioner Montgomery, how long would it take you to put together what the cost of everything for option 2?
Well, I think I've put together, from a staffing standpoint, a pretty good estimate. To me, that would be kind of the minimum to operate somewhat effectively and efficiently. It would still not give us the breadth of services and resources that you would have with larger, but I think for Seward, it would give us what we need to operate, okay?
But you're saying services that we're not getting. Could you also put a list in there, services of? Absolutely. That what we're missing?
Sure.
That we would have gotten with the other ones?
Sure. There are a number of programs that your larger utilities offer that I get calls about frequently. I get visitors coming into my office wanting to have some of these programs and services that the other utilities offer because they're familiar with them, they hear about them. And we're just not able to provide. But to do that, you know, by adding these resources, we could easily incorporate some of those programs and services here in Seward. So the salaries themselves will help cover some of it. Now, if you're talking about doing rebates and that type of thing, then you're talking about, setting aside money from the electric fund as well to do those types of rebates.
My question is, could we have them set up the cost for option 2 to show the public the numbers?
As close, yes. We had all these people over here too, so Councilmember Barnwell.
Yeah, I really like that idea of the ad hoc. No offense to Mr. Montgomery, but I think from a credibility perspective, having an ad hoc committee that was wide variety of people from the community, that maybe including people from Moose Pass or, the vicinity, to kind of vet and dig into this a little further.
Sure.
Question, no offense, but question some of your assumptions.
Yeah.
And that might give people a little more confidence on the upcoming vote if we chose to vote. So I just think, like Liz said, we just don't have we're depending on you, and we do depend on you. You're a great resource for our community, for the city. But again, credibility issues existed in this last vote. I think we need to address those credibility issues, and an ad hoc committee would really help.
Yeah, Councilmember Barnwell, I agree.
Yeah.
And coming into tonight and putting these 4 options before you, my expectation was not that the council was going to take any action. I felt like it was to share information from my perspective so that it could be looked at and discussed. And if an ad hoc committee or something was the result, I'm all for that. I think the more information you have and the more people that you bring with a diversity of opinions to the group, the better. But having looked at it from all different angles, I really don't see any other options other than 2 and 4 being realistic.
Councilmember Wells, and then.
Thank you, Mayor. So, I think I agree with everybody on this on the ad hoc committee, and especially Councilmember Barnwell's points there. If we were to increase labor, let's say your estimate was 800,000, but let's just say it's 500,000 a year. We have to increase rates because we cannot increase the number of users, the number of ratepayers. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And my second question and my last question, it was my recollection. Yes, thank you. My memory states that Chugach Electric, and please correct me if I'm wrong, put out a letter during our election that stated that they didn't plan to increase their rates. That what we were saying was incorrect when we stated to the public that it's either our rates are going up, HEA's rates are going to go up, and Chugach's rates are going to go up. Am I correct in that memory?
The specifics of what exactly Chugach was saying, I'm not certain. I had conversations with Chugach myself. In my opinion, there was a flyer that was put out. The flyer left out key information from my perspective that should have been included. So in that way, I felt it was misleading. But at the same time, Chugach, their rates are lower. Everyone has acknowledged that at this point. Homer did a great job of talking about their rates and their long-term strategy and how long-term we believe the gap in the rates between Chugach and Homer would close. But, it is a fact that Chugach is going in for a rate increase, and they will be filing by the end of this month. That increase will get passed to Seward customers. That will be along with the increase that we implement as well. So this is the cycle that we're putting ourselves in. If we don't come up with a solution that's going to give us long-term energy security and long-term rate stability. I could see sewerage rates continuing to escalate over the next 10 years, and we would, by far, in my opinion, be the highest, have the highest rates in the rail belt, easily.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember DeMoss.
I'm good, Bob covered it, thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay, so do we want to give any direction tonight? And if so, somebody suggest, okay. Councilmember.
Well, I guess I think that we should move forward with forming the ad hoc committee. So I would like to motion to direct clerk or administration, our clerk?
The clerk's office.
The clerk's office to form an ad hoc committee regarding the electric utility.
To request people for ad hoc committee. I think you put out a flyer, correct, to find people.
Notice for it.
Right. We should figure on the number of people, where they could come from, and such, and probably the length of time of advertising for this. I mean, within that, or we could let, no. We should, so, a committee of, how many is, what is the number of, what is the number of people on the current ad hoc committee for the heat pump?
We have 7 members, and if I may, Madam Mayor, the other thing that I think it's really important that the Heat Loop Ad Hoc Committee has talked about extensively is giving really clear direction on the scope of what, and give them a list of specific deliverables that you want them working on.
Okay, Councilmember DeMoss.
So, can I speak to the motion yet, or are we?
Oh,
okay,
we didn't have a second yet, we're just,
I guess.
we're still just talking, so.
Right, so do we want to figure out what that specific list is?
I suppose we should. Councilmember Wells.
I agree with Councilmember DeMoss 100% on putting together ad hoc committee. Is it something that we should work on individually, a list, and bring it forward at the next meeting, and so that we would be more prepared?
That would be useful.
Time-wise?
Otherwise, it's going to drag on, but Councilmember.
I was going to suggest that we could see who applies and comes forward and then have a meeting with them to discuss.
Okay.
I was just
Vice
going,
Mayor.
thank you. I was just going to say, if we wait until the next meeting to do this, then that only gives them basically 1 month. 1 month. That's a very short span of time.
That would be,
For them to find all the, before August, which would be the timeline for the general election, or the
Right.
regular election.
if their purpose is to prep people for the election. Councilmember Calhoun.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, on that, we're running two separate items here. So, and I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm just speaking. Everybody knows how I feel. If we were going to hypothetically look at getting this on the October 3rd ballot, which would be the next regular election, we have to decide to do that by the August 8th meeting. But the ad hoc committee doesn't have a time limit like that. They're going to work on getting the information that they need all the way through. And if we don't put it on an October, regular election ballot and wait until November or something like that, then it's just more time. We're going to need the information on the option 2 regardless. And so I don't think we have to necessarily talk the two in the same thing right now. They're kind of two separate subjects.
Mr. Regis had something.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, so, we're talking about the ad hoc committee, giving deliverables, they could go under what Rob has put down as option 2, is what needs to happen, what they need to look at. It's already written out, what they need to look at. So there's your,
Okay. So do you want to read?
First, I just want to comment that I don't want the ad hoc committee to be working on the potential sale of the
Right.
utility.
Right.
I want them just to be talking about our current issues with the utility and what the future of it is. And specifically, like Norm said, option 2 and what Rob is. Whether we don't need their services or not, we don't know that yet, come October or whatever happens. So I guess I would motion to have the clerk's office advertise for an ad hoc committee of 7 people to discuss the status, to discuss the current status and future of the electric utility.
And do you want to add from the general area or within the city limits, or you could get that specific later? Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, she's in the middle of a motion.
She
but
is. Councilmember.
My thought on that was a 7-member ad hoc committee, 4 inside the city limits, 3 outside the city limits up to Moose Pass.
Okay, so do you?
An ad hoc committee of 7 people, including 3 people within city limits of Seward and 4 outside of Seward.
The other way.
4
and
inside city
3
limits
out.
and 3 outside up to Moose Pass.
Okay, is there a second?
Well, I think we gotta hear it one more time in full.
Karen, would you mind reading
But it's,
that?
he seconded it, but, yeah, can you read that?
I think
We have to-
I have to direct the clerk to advertise for an ad hoc committee consisting of 7 members, 4 inside city limits, 3 outside city limits, to discuss the current status of the Seward utility.
Does that sound?
If we could just change it to 3 outside
No.
city limits up to Moose Pass.
Up to Moose Pass.
Because we don't want,
Outside up to Anchorage.
Also,
we don't want from Anchorage.
right,
Or Bull Point, I
right,
guess we gotta throw.
yeah.
That's-
From the 3 could
Well,
consist
it's
from
outside
Bull
city
Point
limits.
to.
You could say outside city limits,
We could-
within the service territory.
We could
of
say
the
within our
utility.
service
Yeah,
area.
within the
I mean,
service.
The area of service.
That makes sense.
Okay.
So just 7 members within the area of service. Oh, no, 3 lines.
Yeah, you said, I think you would still want to specify
Yeah,
3
outside
outside of
city
city limits.
Or 3.
But within the area of service.
4 inside the city limits,
That's
the other 3 within the service area, outside the city limits.
Does that sound all right? And we have a second, who was the second? Okay, Vice Mayor Oseng is seconded.
Okay.
And now we can talk about that. Councilmember Barnhart.
So just to be clear, that you're not specifying what they're going to, because I think that's a good idea that Mr. Reed just had, but I do think it would be good to dive into the specifics of the costs that aren't really associated or looked at necessarily in this presentation. So we just get a really detailed nuts and bolts with comparisons of the two. And so I like your idea about sitting on the questions for a while before, we get the group together, but we come up with questions and then ask them with these specific, very specific tasks.
Okay.
So I guess, do you feel like that leaves enough flexibility for us to, okay. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, because I have it to discuss the current status of the Seward utility.
And then we can, right? Other discussion, or do we want to vote on that motion? Okay, Madam Clerk, I think we're ready to vote on that motion.
On the motion to direct the clerk to advertise for an ad hoc a 7-member ad hoc committee consisting of 4 inside city limits, 3 outside city limits within the service area to discuss the status of the Seward utility. Councilmember Calhoun,
Yes.
Councilmember Barnwell,
Yes.
Councilmember Wells,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMoss,
Yes.
Councilmember Finch,
Yes.
Councilmember Osenga,
Yes.
Mayor McClure.
Yes.
Mayor McClure, your motion passed unanimous. The clerk does have one point of clarification. Would you like this notice to state that it's to be presented at the next council meeting? Or did you want to give them a month and give it to July 10th?
Next council meeting, do you think there'd be enough people paying attention that we could?
It is summertime. We can talk about it
So
enough.
typically, we would do, the notifications have to be submitted by 5 o'clock the Friday before that council meeting.
Okay.
So the 23rd.
Councilmember Wells.
I believe with the number of folks who did turn out to vote and the number of folks who did turn out to be educated, whether they voted or not, it's still fresh in everyone's mind. And people who voted to keep the utility, I hope that they will quickly request to be on the ad hoc committee so that we can figure out what this is going to cost. I mean, if the folks who wanted us to keep it, let's figure out what it's going to take. So I believe that, that those people are listening, and I would hope that they're going to jump in.
Okay. Any other proposals or discussion on this tonight? We can always bring back further discussion at the next meeting and meeting. Councilmember Calhoun, no? Okay, we're ready to conclude this item. I've had a request for an urgent break. I hate to break this late in the meeting, but can we take a 5-minute break at this point? We have 2 more items to discuss, and that's about it, but it's important. Thank you.
Yeah. I can see the last 2 items going as long as that one.
Sitting that long.
It's going to be close.
Not exactly.
Close as long.
Good, just, we're full.
Very good. Madam Mayor, we're good to go.
Okay, I'll gavel this back in. I never gaveled this out, but I like gaveling, so. The next item in other new business is entitled 6th Avenue Public Works Facility Location Determinations. You can find the information on page 187. And I would look to administration for some guidance on what you want from us tonight.
Madam Mayor, I'm going to have Stephen address this tonight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple items that administration is requesting city council direction on. There's quite a bit of information contained in the attachments. So as we know, we're working on the construction of a new public works facility out at the Fort Raymond property, and in addition to that, concurrently, we're moving forward with a few action items to ensure that the, what I'm going to call the old or current public work facility is ready and prepped for transformation into alternate use. The municipal land plan indicates that after relocation, the current property will be made available for sale and conversion to residential development. And it specifically indicates that we will rezone to urban residential. So what we're hoping for tonight is specific city council direction to administration on two items. The first being the lot sizes that council would prefer the lots to be sold in. Our recommendation would be a combination of 30 by 100 lots and 60 by 100 lots. The other, I guess, option B would be you could sell the entire parcel to a developer. Our preference would be based off of looking at prior meeting minutes over the last literally 30 years that there's a very large appetite in this community to sell to individuals in our community so that they can build homes. I guess subsequent to that, I would also say that if I'm a Seward voter, we're going to be hopefully putting a proposition on a future ballot to go up to bond for the cost associated with building a new public works facility. And it's a lot more palatable to take that, that bond on if I believe and I know that Seward residents are going to be the beneficiaries of purchasing those lots. And as Councilmember Finch just mentioned to us a couple minutes ago, we all know we have a housing problem. So anything we can do to put really pride, what I would say, who wouldn't want to live down on Belaine or 6th Avenue. So that would be our recommendation. And I guess I can move on to the second question from there. But we're just hoping to get direction from council on what mechanism would you like us to go about selling these lots in terms of lot size?
Okay. Councilmember Finch?
Yeah, Mike, one question. This zoning would not be able to do short-term rental?
So I'll have Director Bickling speak to that. Urban residential is, you can do it as an accessory use just like you can in R1. Do you want to add to that, Jason? Okay. So you still are able to, but it's that traditional B&B, just like an R1 zoning is. In an accessory fashion, so it has to be owner occupied.
Councilmember West.
So, remember we voted to say that nobody can buy a house or build a house and just turn it into a vacation rental. But if they want to offer an Airbnb, a B&B in the home and they're owner occupied, we all agreed that that was okay.
And I just want to reiterate on that, I really support that regulation in UR because that really does help out the Seward local that's trying to live here year round and afford their homes. Just my little 2 cents.
Okay. Well, Vice Mayor Senko.
I was just going to say that I like the idea of the Belaine Boulevard, 60-foot wide, and then the 6th Avenue side, 30-foot wide lots. I think that would actually be pretty beneficial.
I'm seeing a lot of nods. Can we just see how we feel about that idea? I concur that that is a nice division. First of all, is there any real objection to that? Okay. the other option, sell the whole thing to a developer, that would be a thing that we should discuss too, but Councilmember West.
So to the discussion of sell to a developer, I am 100% opposed to that. I believe we have plenty of Seward residents who can afford property and can afford to build a home, but cannot get it done here. And I wholeheartedly believe that we should save that property and offer that for Seward residents and not for a developer.
Okay,
I agree.
I'm seeing a lot of nods on that. Okay, so that's some direction right there. Do we-
If you would indulge us, Madam Mayor, if we could make a motion to that effect so that it's on the record.
Okay.
We could be talking 2 years from now when we're
Yeah,
taking
that's-
action, so having formal direction to that effect would be helpful for us.
Do you want to?
Did-
I'll make it.
It was your,
Oh, go
okay.
ahead.
So Mayor, I'd like to, it's getting late. I'd like to make a motion to direct administration to outline or to exclude a developer from purchasing the property and to leave it for individual purchasing.
Okay, that's motion one. We can do two motions, right?
And my second motion would be,
Oh, we need-
oh, sorry.
Second that, and we'll vote on that, and then we'll do the sizes.
Mhm.
Okay, is there a second?
Could I add to
Well-
that motion?
Let's.
I'll second.
Okay, Demas seconded. That motion's on the floor, so.
For discussion, right.
Discussion.
The
So,
individual cannot purchase more than 2 lots side by side.
do we need that kind of specificity at this point?
No, the item one is specific to lot size and zoning.
Right. But this was excluding a developer. So, yeah, so that would refer to this next motion that we might get, I think is what he's saying, okay? Councilmember Garnwell.
I may be out of the loop, but can someone help me with, the Coast Guard, are they interested in these lots, or they have a completely different?
They've expressed interest in other land, but they haven't provided us any formal offer, and these parcels were not an item that we've been approached with.
So the motion on the floor, are we ready to vote?
With the second, right?
And with a second, are we ready to vote on that? Okay, Madam Clerk, do you want to read that for us, just to be sure?
Demas was a second on that, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I've got direct administration to exclude a developer from purchasing the property and leave it to purchase by individual.
That's how it reads. Maybe we're not ready to vote yet because I'm seeing a glitch over here in administration. Did you want to speak to what?
Well, what we're really hoping for is direction on the lot size and the zoning.
Well, you mentioned two things.
Yeah, you did.
Oh, yeah.
We're just doing the second thing.
Oh.
I believe they were going to do it as a second.
You did that one there first.
Okay.
Okay, so back to, are we ready to vote on this? Okay, Madam Clerk, you have read it, we are ready to vote.
Okay.
Councilmember Osenga?
Yes.
Councilmember Calhoun?
I know.
Councilmember Wells?
Yes.
Councilmember Barnwell?
Yes.
Councilmember Demas?
Yes.
Councilmember Finch?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
Yes.
Mayor McClure, the vote was unanimous, motion passes.
Okay, thank you. Now, as to your first, I will move that in terms of lot sizes, we make them 60 by 100 foot lots on the Blaine Avenue side and 30 by 100 foot lots on the 6th Avenue side.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion on that? Yes, Councilmember Calhoun.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Do we know how many lots that creates?
We do.
And if I missed that earlier, I apologize.
Total of 40.
32.
It's
And
around,
32 on Sixth and 9 on Belane.
so that many lots.
9 on Belane and 32 on 6th.
That's what it has.
That doesn't sound very high.
I'm at over
25.
41.
25?
25, yeah.
That sounds better.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at different.
Well, we're not fixing the number
That's
right
okay.
now.
No, I'm
We're just
just-
discussing, I know.
All right, I was reading.
I
It's
like
a
the
lot.
first number better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Councilmember Calhoun, what was your?
Well, Madam Mayor, the only thing, and I'm good with most of that, but just in my mind, a 30 by 100 is a little small-ish. I take my property, our property, for instance, on 4th Avenue. You know, Old Town lots, 30 by 100, except ours is 45 by 100. And that's enough for our house and a driveway. That's it. There's no side yard, there's, you know, and I understand a starter home, I understand, you know, 100 by 30. I was just wondering if, and that's why I was asking for the number of lots, because then you start looking at how much when you sell it and what we're looking. If there might be an option for a couple of 100 by 45 lots on the 6th Avenue side, or a couple of 45 by 100 lots on the Belane side, as opposed to all of them. And it's not a, you know, fall on my sword kind of thing at all. If everybody wants to do 100 by 30, that's cool. It's just 100 by 30 is not a real big. I mean, we can see across from the post office what a 100 by 30 house is going to look like.
Okay, let me go to Councilmember Finch.
And just thinking about what you were saying, the 30 by 100 creates parking problems in the wintertime because they're parking on the road or having to come through the alley. 45 by 100 would give them that ability to park next to their house.
Councilmember West.
So I appreciate where Councilmember Calhoun and Councilmember Finch are coming from, but as a person who owns 3 30 by 100 lots, they are small. But if we look right here on 3rd Avenue, we have some amazing new homes that are built on 30 by 100. And with our current housing situation, the more homes that people can build, the better. Granted, it's not going to be a huge yard for the animals and all the kids, but it's going to be a maximum homes for that area. And although 30 by 100 is small, absolutely. Do we want people to have a side yard? Because I disagree that you can't park on a 30 by 100, because you can build a 2-story home that's 33 feet tall and push it back on that 100-foot lot and still park 3 cars in front. I feel that we should maximize this property as for home residential homes as possible, because that's what we need. That's all.
Speaking to the 30-foot lots, there are a lot of homes in Seward, old homes that are on 30-foot lots.
Of course.
There was a push in later years to build huge homes. If you want a big lot and a huge home, there's all that stuff up above, if you can afford it. But what this would allow, in my mind, is exactly what we were talking about. They'll still be kind of pricey perhaps, but because that's just the times. But people can build within their means and still have some pretty neat ones. Look at the Andrews house, for example. That's amazing on a 30-foot lot. So let me get Councilmember Finch.
How many more lots if you did Belane instead of 60? 45 foot by 100, which would add.
We could do some
I mean,
math
how
over
many
here.
60 lots are there?
3 more, right?
Yeah.
3 more.
9.
It's
Just an
9.
easy number,
Right?
I think.
Three more.
Three more lots. So you need 12. Yeah, I would like to see Blaine be 45 by 100. That gives more.
Councilmember Barnwell, you had something.
I was just, after we voted for the, not having a developer develop those, are we shooting ourselves in the foot for a condominium kind of setup or a zero lot line where someone comes in and builds a multi-unit structure?
We haven't discussed that. Councilmember Wells.
Councilmember Barnwell, only because I've been in this exact position. In order to build a multi-family unit, right, say a duplex, you, correct me if I'm wrong, Director Binkley, but I believe you have to supply 2 parking spaces per unit, may I ask?
Sure, we're getting a nod, but perhaps an actual answer would be good.
Yes.
Yeah, I honestly don't have like everything off the top of my head, but I believe it is for those ones you do have to, you start getting into parking.
You have to supply 2 parking spots on your lot.
On your lot, correct.
Per unit. And so on a 30 by 100, if you wanted to build a multi-family unit, it couldn't be any taller than 33 feet tall. I know because that's exactly how high I built my house, and because that was as high as I could build it. But you have to supply, if it's going to be a 30 by 100, or it was when I built my house, it could only be 33 feet tall. You'd still have to be able to supply 2 parking spaces per unit. So if you built a duplex, you'd have to supply 4 parking spaces on your property, not on the street. Street parking doesn't count.
And I'll have to look, I don't know if you can do multifamily in urban NUR.
No, that was going to be.
Urban residential.
Oh, so it's a mute point.
Yeah, that was good.
The zero lot line.
You'd have to do R2 or R3, right?
So Madam Mayor.
Yes.
To Councilmember Prince's question, it'd be additional 3 lots on, if you make them 45s.
Oh, yeah, I would like the 45 by 100, that would give us 3 extra lots.
Over.
If you want to make a
Okay.
amendment to my motion, you could.
Could you do an amendment to that motion to 45 by 100 on Blaine?
Well, my motion was 60 feet on Blaine. This is what we're discussing. So we could either defeat my motion or it could be amended. Yes, Councilmember Calhoun.
Madam Mayor, I guess my question, the thought on the 60 by 100, is that for nicer waterfront viewing type homes? Something
That was kind of
is what why they were looking at 60 by 100, just for a nicer, more luxury type home?
That was my idea of it. Councilmember Demas.
I assume that community development has hashed this out and talked about it a lot, so can I ask Jason why you chose these specific lot sizes? I mean, what do you think about his idea of going smaller on Blaine?
The reasoning behind the 60 by 100 was because it does provide you a little bigger house, nicer houses on that side. But also too, with Blaine, there's a lot of traffic that goes along there. And so you actually, by having a few less lots with 60 by 100s, a little more space for parking, a little more space for people to arrange their vehicles by backing in and out off of the lane all the time and that type of thing. So a lot of it, we were just thinking about parking. And obviously you wouldn't want to put like 30 by 100s on that side, because then you start really getting into a weird kind of crunch with parking and traffic and backing up, and because you don't have much room to maneuver in your own driveway that way. And so that was a lot of it. But I don't think there was too much thought given to it other than creating something that's a little bit denser on that 6th Avenue side and creating something that's a little bit more open on the Blaine side. And I think like it's really up to you guys to decide what you would like with that land. You know, unless you wanted to, if you want to just kick it back to us and or come up with something so you can actually, sometimes it's helpful to actually see what something looks like on a 60 by 100 or do something that way. But I don't, you know, we could do whatever it is that you guys want us to produce there.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Finch.
Because my concern is, we know we're having housing issues, and we do the 60 by 100 lots, that's gonna be higher costing housing, for anybody who's in the 45s, still gives room, gives 3 extra houses there, and could help with affordability.
Councilmember Wells.
I would like, since we have so much time on this, at least I believe we do, I would like to take Director Binkling up on seeing some type of plot layout so that we can make a complete decision,
Okay.
an educated decision.
Could I ask, I think I want to ask the Assistant City Manager on this, if I would withdraw my motion, except that the recommendation would be maybe we could see the 30 and the 60 and then also the 30 and the 45 or something like that. And if that's the case, that shouldn't be too difficult to draw up, so we could bring it back at the next meeting and give direction at that point?
Sure, we will, Jason and I will work
If
together
we do
and put
that,
together
and would
another
that-
discussion item.
Okay, and would that be okay with you then? So I'll withdraw my motion then, except that we're requesting now that we get to see these, okay? Is that fair? Okay.
There's no legislation.
And Councilmember?
Sorry.
Wells,
Did we ask Jason if that was something we could do in a timely manner?
Oh, I saw nods.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. I didn't hear.
No, I
Okay.
did.
And I guess just one thing on, as far as multifamily, with a conditional use permit, you can do multifamily in urban residential zoning.
Well, at this point, are we okay just getting
Mhm.
that
Just-
information?
Yep.
Okay, because we do have some time. We haven't moved the thing yet. Okay. Any other stuff to discuss on this item?
No, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, so now, finally, last item. Councilmember Finch requests appointed officials to draft a resolution to repeal the personnel policy number 2023-01, phone use and recording policy. This request is on page 205, and I guess I should ask Councilmember Finch to tell us what he's thinking.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This one's very close to home with me. From my career, I used it for dealing with unprofessional supervisors and staff, but it really hit home for me personally to the point that it helped get positive results up to from a Superior Court judge. Okay. Number 2, Alaska Statute 42, I think it's 422310, this is a one-party consent state. We're taking that right away. We should be taking that right away from the employees or the supervisor. Because if you're being a professional supervisor, you shouldn't have to worry about being recorded. Okay, if you're being professional in the workplace, you know, just like if you are being professional and you know you have an annoyed staff, would you or would you not record that? Yes, you would. So if you're being a professional supervisor in your position and have supervisor training, you don't care if you're being recorded. You're going to do the think before you speak. So this takes away their right to protect themselves. Like I said, I personally know how it helped my family at a Superior Court judge level. Okay. Without it, it's word for word. But when you have the actual recording of what is actually said aggressively with verbal abuse, you cannot, in a court, deny it.
Okay.
So if we are being professionals, we have no worries. We should not worry about being recorded. But as a professional, everything you say can end up in court.
Okay, we could get a motion to direct administration and a second, or we could talk to administration first. I think.
Madam Mayor, you have the attorney can talk to this.
Well, should we have a motion first, or
Sure.
just, do you want to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to repeal personnel policy 2023-01, phone use and recording policy.
I'll second.
Okay, so it's moved and seconded, so at least it's on the floor. And if that's okay, we could ask the attorney to give advice on this? Is this legal? Can we, I mean, what we have in place, my question would be, is what we have in place legal? But first, Vice Mayor Osenga.
Can I just ask one question, please? So the motion as it stands is to repeal the entirety of 2301. Is that what the goal is? The entirety. So that includes videos, photos, or audio recordings in restrooms and our locker rooms are strictly prohibited. That's in this.
Alaska statute already covers if you do that, you can be arrested.
So what we're going to do is we're going to just defer to state
State law.
state law. We're not going to have it in our, so that's what this is. Okay, thank you.
And we can add to it, we can't take away, and we're taking away this right. And item number 5, video, photography, audio recording is covered under, I believe it's 4223, 320.
Thank you.
Okay. Are you prepared to weigh in on this?
No, not on whether it's a advisable policy from an HR standpoint. I can certainly talk about the fact that an employer has the legal right to establish rules of conduct in the workplace, and that the Councilmember Finch is accurately describing state law in Alaska. Somebody can tape what somebody is telling them without advising that person ahead of time that they're going to be doing that, and without their consent. That means you don't get arrested for it, you don't get charged with a crime, but that doesn't mean you have a legal right to not have your employer have a policy that prohibits doing that in the workplace. So some of this is a little, I mean, whether it's a good idea is a completely debatable issue, from my perspective. I mean, I am not an HR person. So as to the benefits and the drawbacks of this as a policy matter, that is a decision for the council to make with input from your own, HR department as to why this would be a good idea to have this policy. But legally speaking, I guess if I was going to give an example, it's not a crime for people in Alaska to smoke marijuana. And so some people would say, well, I have the right to smoke marijuana, and they would be correct in that, you're not going to get arrested for it if you're doing that in your home. But does that mean you have the right to tell your employer, you can't discipline me for smoking marijuana in the workplace? And the answer is no. I mean, there is a difference between whether or not the state of Alaska can charge you with a crime for recording the conversation, and whether or not your employer can prohibit you and therefore subject you to discipline in the workplace for recording a conversation. So, I mean, there is a difference, but that's me being a lawyer. It's not me telling you this is a good policy to have or not a good policy to have. Now, I can tell you, I can give you my 2 cents worth on the pros and cons of it. The pro of it is, as Councilmember Finch has described, in a situation where somebody feels they're being mistreated by their supervisor and they want to be able to prove it to somebody, a recording is pretty good proof, right? The con is, at a different level, where you have relatively minor disputes between employees, not at the employee supervisor level, and all of a sudden you've created an atmosphere where your employees are running around recording each other, and then going to the supervisor and saying, employee X told me, that I was stupid, and I want you to do something about it, and I've got it on tape, So, part of this is, what is your philosophy about HR and employee relationships? And, in many respects, the ideal workplace is, everyone's on the same team. We've got a fairly significant number of people that are all supposed to pull together for the common good of Seward, and we really don't think it achieves that goal if we've created an environment where, it's allowed to go around and record stuff. Now, but Councilmember Finch has got, that's the other side of it is, well, we want people to think that everything you say in the workplace, someone might be recording it, because then that will impact how you treat everyone. And it's kind of like a human psychology question, and I can't tell you one is not good or the other one is better. I mean, that would be somebody that has, more experience in HR than I do. This policy, when you look at the details, though, you will notice that there is an exception when someone thinks they have a legal right to do this, and the idea is they're required to tell management. So, theoretically, somebody could say, go to the HR director and say, well, my supervisor's doing this, but I know it would be better if I brought you a recording. I'm going to start recording how I'm being treated. Is that okay? And, that was, management would either know and authorize it or not. But so this is from, if you want to know, is this policy legal? Yes, it is a legal policy, but that's a separate issue from some of what Councilmember Finch is talking about, which is, is this a good idea or not?
Okay. Did you have your hand up?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll ask the police chief if that's okay. Yeah. Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out, having read the policy myself, I just want to make sure for clarity that everyone understands this policy doesn't say you cannot record. It's saying that there has to be two-party notification now under the policy. So it's not that it's going away. No one's taking someone's legal right away. It's just like, hey, I'm going to record this because I'm not comfortable. And the idea, I think, behind that, the mentality here was, as Brooks described, you don't want employees kind of on the same level doing this to each other constantly and then causing more problems. And you don't want the lower employees trying to sort of entrap their supervisors with something, like you can ask a loaded question that is going to get a certain kind of answer, and now it's like an I gotcha, or, and we don't want supervisors doing that to the employees, so I think that, I think the idea here was to level the playing field, and I don't think I can only speak for myself, I'm certainly not opposed to recording, and I find now with the union especially, we have a tendency to just try to record that, sort of like disciplinary conversations and things like that anyway, just so it's on the record. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Okay, thank you. I saw a hand, it was Councilmember.
Councilmember Finch had his hand up again before myself.
Okay, Councilmember Finch.
I know 25 years of dealing with supervisors recording and HR recording. They do not give a copy of that to the employee. It's for their own use. But when you have staff, there being, hostile work environment, EEO complaints, sexual harassments by fellow staff or supervisors, and we all work in this world, we know that happens. But this law is specifically written as a one-party consent, and we're now making where both sides have to know, we're taking that right away from that, I'll use a young female that's trying to have a career, but there's a boss pushing her out the door. How do we protect that employee? And historically, there's a reason we're having a hiring problem, and that's one of them, is what happens in the workplace. I've talked to enough people about this. But this is, the Alaska law is a one-party consent. And by saying we want both parties to know now, you could incent, if we continue this, city council could be possibly liable for saying, hey, she had a hostile work environment, but she couldn't record it because when she notified her supervisor to record it, he said no. The unions will record on their half, but the unions keep it for that staff member. But it's for that individual that's walks down the hallway, knows that that staff member down there is harassing. How do you prove sexual harassment with HR these days? He said, she said. The only way you really can is to hear that recording or the sexual harassment of a supervisor or vice versa. But it's a one-party consent law in the state.
Let me get Councilmember Wells.
I appreciate your Councilmember French, but if I understand what the chief just said, you don't need consent from the other party to record. You just have to inform the other party that you're going to record. And if the objective is to prevent sexual harassment, intimidation, and all of that, you, Councilmember Finch, you stated that by administration, HR, management, by them knowing they could possibly be recorded, they may act in a more professional manner. But if I am being harassed and I inform the person who's harassing me, I'm now recording this conversation. I don't need their permission, they just have to know. But then what's going to happen is you're going to get the exact same outcome where they stop harassing and stop intimidating, I would believe.
Okay.
Please.
Hold on. Let me just get Vice Mayor.
So what I was going to just mention was the sole exception clause in this whole thing. If you're going to have a situation where somebody is absolutely, their back is against the wall, they are totally getting harassed sexually or being threatened verbally or something, I do believe that this exception would actually apply, because then they can record the heck out of everything and then go, look, this is what happened. Or if they're not getting the response that they want from administration, then they have the right by this exception, this is what's going on, and then they have the proof to do it, or they have the proof to back up what they're saying. I think that's what that exception is.
Like
Councilmember Finch.
Like Councilmember Wells was saying, the harassment is going on, and once I tell you I'm going to record it, the harassment stopped for then. And normally it changes tack. This is my experience. Okay, I've dealt with every aspect of it. That's why this is a great state law that we shouldn't adjust and amend. I mean, if HR would sit there and listen to that recording and say, thank you for recording, because there is no harassment in it. It would actually let HR know that that individual is focused on trying to find something, because when you hear the recording, you're going to hear exactly the tone, the manner, everything everybody talks about. But to say you have to inform the other party goes against the one-party consent state law. You know, it takes away that individual's right. I mean, Stephen, Norm, me, Randy, we're all big guys, and you know it's easy for us to intimidate people, especially young people in the work environment. You know, I know individuals that have brought this up numerous times to their supervisor, and prime example is nothing happened until time for evaluation, when he started writing, documenting, and recording, and he started writing all of it. And the response was, well, why didn't you come and talk to me? I did talk to you, and you kept doing it. Now we're talking about it in front of your supervisor with all my written documentation, all my recordings. So I strongly feel this policy is not beneficial to maintain keeping staff in sewer.
Okay, bringing it back, did you have anything, administration?
I just wanted to say one thing, like, either the staff or the department head or whoever, supervisor, if they know they're being recorded, they're gonna change their ways. But if you're not being recorded, you can be baited into a conversation. You can be baited into a conversation. That's where, to me, I brought somebody else into a conversation. I brought HR into a conversation because I was being baited into something, and I stopped it and then brought in HR. So it's, I don't know, two-way street. I just think it protects both parties, in my opinion.
You're saying
You can tell the supervisor you're being recorded, or you can tell the employee they're being recorded. That way there's just no baiting going on. I mean, that's what I'm looking at, the baiting, because it would happen to me, so I'm just saying.
So you're saying the existing policy?
Is I think is good, because they know, both parties know they're being recorded.
Well, what we have on the floor is a motion to draft a resolution to repeal. So that's what we're voting on tonight, not actually repealing the policy. We're voting on directing administration to draft an ordinance, resolution to repeal. So are we ready to vote on this?
Yes.
I think we should wrap this up. Okay. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Wells?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMoss?
Yes.
Councilmember Barnwell?
No.
Councilmember Calhoun?
Yes.
Councilmember Finch?
Yes.
Councilmember Osenga?
Yes.
Mayor McClure?
I'll vote no.
Mayor McClure, you have 5 yes, 2 noes.
Okay.
Motion passes.
Okay, so administration, we need a resolution to come back to this.
We'll bring back a resolution back to repeal this ordinance.
Okay, and then we will discuss and vote again. All right, there are no informational items and reports. Now we're to citizen comments, where you have your 5-minute limit, and we have a subject now.
Hi, Skip Ryerson, Inside City Limits. I came to listen to the electrical director's presentation tonight and to listen to city council's comments and discussion. That was my sole purpose for coming out. I did not come prepared with any pre-written comments. I was just interested to hear what was going on. And so I'll offer the following comments regarding the discussion on the 4 options tonight. I agree with Director Montgomery's recommendation that number 2, to continue to run our utility, and number 4, to look further into disposing of our utility are the 2 most viable options. The interesting thing about those options, to me, are, one is reality, and one is hope. So, when I look at this, I'm going, well, we really would like to sell our utility. I believe that's the sentiment in our community. But we've got a ways to go to get to that point. So I don't know if that's achievable. That may not be achievable even after another vote. So number 4, to sell the utility, is kind of a hope. It's out there. I agree with Councilmember Gamas. I like the sentiment, the approach, the tact. We have to face reality. We have a utility to run. We're fortunate to have a director run the utility department with the talent that we have. And Director Montgomery, I think, has done us all a great service. So we're faced with this reality. We have to run a utility. So I think that's the approach that we need to focus on. If we want to look at a sale again, that's great. That could be 6 months. That could be a year down the road. But we've got things to take and get our house in order on the utility. So you made a couple of comments tonight and one recommendation about an ad hoc committee. I looked at the rebuilding section, and I think administration indicated, well, the direction that this ad hoc committee needs to take, and it needs to be, well, it's well written, it's right there, it's on this sheet. And I think you need to think a little deeper about what you really want this group of citizens to accomplish. I think you might be limiting them to just look at this, because when I look at this, I look at is you don't need an ad hoc committee for electric, you need a finance ad hoc committee to help your finance department and your utility director get the information that we need to determine what it's going to cost us, because that information is all going to go into this rate study that the director said he's about to undertake. So, you got to get these information, these assumptions built, and then you basically take them to your rate study. That's how this thing is built, and we'll know what those rates are. So I offer a suggestion. Are we shooting too short? Are we setting our sights too low? I look at the other utilities, and they have basically a board of directors. Is it time for us to basically step up, give this department and this individual the resources that he needs in a group of board of directors that basically supports the electrical department, reports to this group right here, and they help him get this off the ground? Tall order to pull this off, to get this going. 18 months is what he's talked about. So I offer that up to maybe you want to think about that before the next meeting and maybe make some change-ups. But no doubt about it, that finance department's going to need some resources and help, because everything that you're asking for them, for the electrical department to do, is going to have to come from finance. Okay? And on that note, I think if I'm not mistaken, I believe that somewhere in the last 6 months, I think I sent a document in to council or administration outlining the information that it would be nice for the community to have, to understand what's behind the options to sell this utility. What is our rate going to look like? And I think I've been asking administration for over 6 or 8 months, since last August, for that information. What's the rate study going to look like? We should get that information. What's the cost going to look like? What's the line loss going to look like? What are all the elements of this going to look like? So that information has been asked for, it just never came because we don't have the resources in finance to do the job, and the gentleman running that department needs resources. So give that some thought. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who else wants to speak? She's here.
Cindy Eklund, Inside City Limits. Yeah, I apologize for not being here when my name was on the list, but I got called into work. So I heard that you pulled the opposing the original ordinance because Assemblymember Cox from the Soldotna area brought forward one that secured seats for cities over 2,000 population, so that as long as we stay over that, we're good. We're at 2,500 now, but hopefully with this housing, we'll get some more. So it secured the seats for Kenai, Soldotna, Homer, and Seward, and then there will be a map coming back for the other districts, so there'll probably be an East Peninsula seat as well as they have now. And so it will bring the commission, the planning commission, down to 9 seats, which is the goal of the first one. So another item that happened at the last assembly meeting was Representative Justin Ruffridge, who represents the Kenai Soldotna area, came and gave a little update about what happened during the legislative session. And one of the statements that he said really resonated with me is that our state legislature needs to start planning for the future and not just trying to decide what's going to happen in the next session, but planning 10, 20 years out. And I had asked an individual to come and speak in the presentation at the meeting on childcare. Stephanie Berglund, CEO of Thread Alaska, which kind of is the head of the early childhood care for the state, had a 10-minute presentation and answered questions about the importance of early childhood care. And Mike Tupper, assembly member from the South Peninsula, and I have been working with the borough attorney, and we plan on bringing forward an ordinance that will allow the peninsula to exercise some of its economic development authority in helping fund some early childhood care throughout the whole peninsula. So I'm hoping to have that ordinance there by the meeting in July 11th. So hopefully we have good things coming on early childhood care. I heard today about another person who's got a job but can't work because there's no child care. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Who else wants to speak? Anyone else?
Becky Dunn, inside the city limits. Ow. There's no leg room under here. I bag my shame. I wanted to thank you guys for the work we've been putting into the housing issues. I think it's a bit late, but trying to recover. I think that's a good idea to do like Liz commented on where you can rent a room in your house or 2 rooms in your house, because that's a year-round resident just making more money. That doesn't add to the problem. The ones that rent the whole house, particularly the ones that only live in the state, that's the problem. And the housing, the 30 foot is very narrow. I propose to take 4 of those 30-foot ones and divide them into, 4 of those 30-foot lots and divide them into 3 40-foot lots. We're trying to shoot for more supervisors, higher paid people coming to town, and then a 30-foot lot with kids, dog, or whatever, vehicles, then you roll your bear-proof garbage can out there. There's just, that's tiny. I think that extra 10 foot might help a bit. And just my 2 bits on that. Thank you for doing the ad hoc committee and including people from outside the city limits. I think that was nice. And I also think people want to be involved in a discussion, even though there's not that many showing up for council and speaking. And, well, including hiring the city manager. There was nobody at the meeting earlier, but 2 people in the audience, and I was one of them, and I was only there for a short time. People need to pay attention to speak up, and and then now we're moving on to the electric. What I also, once again, like Liz's idea on fixing it up. Whatever we do now, do for resale. That's a realtor way of thinking, I think. Whatever you do, fix it up, make it worth more, whether it's for us or somebody else. I see so many people spend money on their house and fix it up when they've lived in it for 30 years just before they sell it. So let's just start fixing it up no matter what happens, and concentrate on that, and get a finance director. That's important. Though I know we're trying. And I cannot pick on Wills about his notes because the rest of mine are unreadable, really, so I won't tie up any more time. Oh, town hall meeting. I think that people want to be included in the discussion, so a town hall meeting, I think we'd benefit from that, and we would air it on 91.7 and set up wherever it was, because town hall wouldn't work in this little area, and then could air it another time later on too for those that couldn't make it to that meeting. I don't know, I really think that might be beneficial. And that's about it, except for if you're having trouble with an employee, or you're having trouble with your employer, talk to a lawyer too. Don't be afraid to go outside of your job source, or talk to a lawyer, ask all these questions that you would ask to your lawyer. And true cameras do prevent people from, or letting them, One thing that's always kind of bothered me, because I know the 2 incidences that have happened in that back alleyway, there's no camera on that back alleyway. I could say I did this on those front steps, and there's no way you guys would know I wasn't, because there's no camera outside there. And some people get really heated at the council meeting, so it's a ticking time bomb, something happening outside. I mean, there's already been one restraining order and another incident just recently, so I think that it's time to put cameras outside other than just right outside the jail door. Cover your butt. Thank you.
Bob Valdez, 520 Fifth Avenue. Number one, I thought when we bought that big ladder truck, for some reason, that we extended the height of the houses past 33 feet. That's why we bought the ladder. Secondly, I was reading, I call it the Phoenix Life, the local newspaper, and your future city managers, I'm going to be polite and just say they're all overrated. They're all Joe Colleges. You need somebody like Norm that's going to go out and walk around, look, how come his chuck hole's not fixed in it? Those college guys, they don't see that. So I suggest that you look back in their background and get somebody with a working man's attitude, and then he can learn the city manager's job. Thirdly, you all talking about the loop system, the heat and sidewalks. This has been talked about for 30-some years. And way back in Diener's days, which Norm would remember, Diener was here, I went to Diener first. I said, Mr. Diener, they want to heat the sidewalks. Put the Weasel hose in there and cap it off in the end, fill it with fluid. Then the time comes when we want to hook up the Weasel, the heat system, we're hooked up. Now you got to tear all your sidewalks apart and everything else, which are some are only a year old, 2 years old, to replace this, to put these Weasel system. The new maintenance shop you're going to put in. Don't listen to, well, I shouldn't say, but anyway, the electric building, we wanted to put the Weasel system in the floor and then hook it up, we had money. No, they went and put 15 or 17 toilet stoves in there at $3,000 a stove with $100, $200 in maintenance, and they would have burned used oil. But the lady division on the city council beat me and Uncle Willard down, and that's what you end up getting. And the third thing was, back in them days, we didn't have a Sea Life Center here. The lights would go out. The police department would go down there with their lights, you know, their headlights, and shine them up the street. Guys could go back and forth. I said, Mr. Diener, we're doing a sheet metal job on a new generator plant, and these new sidewalks going in, put an emergency electric line in there, a little light here and there, we'll solve it. That we don't need it. All these guys are going, this is all past thinking. And I'm just trying to say, and last but not least, my dealings with Homer Electric are shady. They talk with a forked tongue. My suggestion is, go with Chugiak right like tomorrow, sign the contract, let's go. I go by, for the past 10 years, I went by their big power plant off Minnesota Drive, and they only fire them up once in a while, once a month, so they got plenty of power. And where Homer doesn't have the power. And we've used Chugiak electric linemen, and every time something happens, snap your fingers, them guys are here to help you, and they're here. My suggestion is, give your contract to Chugiak Electric, and I never heard in the discussions with the guy saying that Chugiak gives dividends like they used to. Plus, has anybody said Chugiak pays this, or charges this much and Homer this much? What is the rate difference? I don't know. So, that's all my suggestions. I mean, and I got to compliment Norm. I was coming in from town. How smooth he put that little package together with the construction guys about their work. And they're working because at night because of the traffic down and everything else. But it's very, very smooth. And that's the type of city manager you're going to have to hire that can put a deal together like Norm. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Bob. Is there anyone else wishing to speak?
Alan Nickel, outside city limits. I just wanted to follow up on the electric presentation. I agree with, all the stuff that Rob had to say, but, as a department head here, I just want to remind you guys, you know, he brought up wages, and wages is a problem for all of us, and all of the city employees are dealing with this, and particularly those that are under, you know, say grade 6. It's almost impossible to live here under that grade. So these are things that are going to have to get fixed, you know, and you heard Rob say these utility rates could go up by as much as 20%. That's just adding more pressure to already strapped employees. And he accurately pointed out that housing is an issue. And I would just add to that we have several vacancies in the city right now. I've got at least 5 in my department. And even if I hired someone, where would I put them? I've got nowhere to put them. So, and then on top of that, I have an employee who is spending $1,500 a month for a studio, and that is well over 50% of their monthly income. And this person is actively seeking additional employment just so they can stay here. And if they leave, it's going to leave a void. You know, I mean, we're going to lose services because this person is gone, you know, and you know, I hate to go through that again. So, and this is something that in my department, my guys have to hear me rail on about this all the time, and I just want to throw it at you guys as a concept to think about, and it's what I call compression. And compression is, in an organization like mine, I have layers. You know, I've got the line guys, I've got the supervisors, and then I have administrators. And in a healthy organization, it's important that we have a competitive promotion process. And what we want there is the best people applying to move up when vacancies happen in leadership. And so, you know, they say that, you know, like, the pay goes up as you go up, but it's not about the boss making the big bucks. It's about this promotion process so that it's, you know, you're getting the best people up there. And so many agencies, Alaska State Troopers comes to mind for sure, have really had to find out the hard way what happens when the lower levels start making more than the upper levels, and all of a sudden the only people that are promoting up are the ones that are about to get fired. And it's like, oh, we better put them over here. And you know, that's just so dysfunctional, so unhealthy. And so when we talk about, you know, raising the pay, and even for administrators and stuff, don't look at it as you know, oh, the top, you know, the cream needs more. It's not about that. It's about this proper structure and protecting that. And so I just you know, I'm happy to meet with you guys at any time and give my perspective if it'll be at any help at all. But I'm asking you to really please, you know, spend some time thinking about this, because you know, we've got to figure out how to fill these positions, and we've got to figure out where we can put these people. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, is there anyone else wanting to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'll bring it back to council and administration comments and responses to citizen comments. So, Mr. Regis.
Yeah, so on the ladder truck, I'll find out where we were at with that. I think there was an issue with it not operating properly, so they couldn't bring nothing forward. So I'll be checking on that. So I'm going to continue to work with the contractor on the project over there to see if they're not, you know, I know that both homeowners and, people are being upset, about there was a lot of phone calls, a lot. So, and I was on vacation, so, anyways, we continue to work with them. Like I said, the first day was a mess, but after that, you can see it's kind of flowing smoothly. A little thing this morning, but like I said, it's kind of flowing smoothly. And Councilmember DeMoss, I found a note, you said something about my tags earlier. So she did call GovHR, and our finance director is actually $20,000 less than what the normal average is. So sorry about that, I didn't have the answer for you earlier, so. And I want to thank Tim for his presentation tonight. It was nice and good to see him, so.
And Mr. Sewell.
3 things. First of all, thank you to council for supporting and looking at the board and commissioner attendance. Those boards and commissions work for you, and we provide that information in the CMR, and appreciate your support, because especially with P&Z, it affects our ability to get things done, so thank you. Thank you for the direction regarding Muni Land Plan. We've been trying to make the Muni Land Plan a living and breathing document, because council direction on those big picture decisions really helps us, because those are decisions that we're going to implement in future years when we may not have a council that's as pro getting stuff done, or just the consistency. So thank you very much. That direction is very helpful. And then I wish Tim Dillon was still in the audience. I guess for our community, Tim is a real asset. He's kind of one of those people that is always like working on the background to do things that are good for Seward. And then personally, Tim is a mentor of mine. I call Tim probably once a month just to pick his brain. Tim's an amazing guy, and he's a friend to our community and to me, and I'm gonna miss him being with KPED, but I know he'll still be around, so thank you, Tim Dillon.
Okay. Councilmember Barnwell, I'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim Dillon, for the presentation today. I think that the ad hoc committee for studying future of our electrical system is a good start on trying to come to some resolution for our problems there. And thanks, Rob, for the good presentation today. I appreciate that. The group for the Japanese contingent coming over, we've met 3 times so far. It's Mr. Peck, Ms. Sorensen, and me. And we have 4 Japanese students coming over the end of July. And we're planning that now they have a chaperone with them. And then we have 10 to 11 Japanese citizens coming over from Obihiro the end of August. And we have no students from Seward going there. None of them applied. And then we have to shore up our plans for our group that is planning to go over there for October. We do, as a group, need to, on the next meeting, we'll have to have a discussion of how we need more money, I think, in our account. I looked up prices today, and they're somewhere in the $1,500 to $2,000 a person. But we'll put that up on the next meeting, so just want to give you an update. Thanks.
Councilmember Fitch.
I'd like to thank Community Development for doing Spring Creek and 4th of July Creek. I think that's awesome, and I can't wait to see how that pans out overall. Thanks to Tim Dillon's presentation, and Rob Montgomery is always awesome. The ad hoc, that's got a good direction to go. It'll be interesting to see the 30, 45, and 60-foot lot layouts, and if possible, what the estimated value of those lots would be. But overall, it seems to be moving in a better direction. As long as we're moving forward, that's all I care about. Move forward.
Thank you. Councilmember Wells.
Thank you. So I'll echo everything everybody else has said, but I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who participated in putting the animal shelter together. Unfortunately, I wasn't there for the big event, I was out of town. However, I did get to go there a few days early because my wife's dog jumped out of my truck at the gas station and ended up there. So I got to go in early and pay his fine and donate some money. I was very happy to do that. It's a beautiful place. I also want to say thank you to Seward Pride Alliance for putting on an extremely well-organized and positive event. I want to thank administration for always being so clear with your reports and open to speaking with council and answering citizens' questions. And I want to say thank you to the city attorney for giving such a detailed answers to my earlier questions. And I look forward to seeing a response from our local paper regarding our attorney's explanation of the use of executive sessions. And I hope that our community and those reporters are better informed at this point. And I hope everybody has a great week. Thank you.
Councilmember Calhoun.
I'll keep it short, Madam Mayor. Everybody else is saying thanks to everybody that needs to be thanked. So we'll just echo that. But also remember that Wednesday is Flag Day. And I do believe that there will be patriotic proclamations coming forward in the future. We will work on that. One of the organizations in town has volunteered to take care of that. So we will do that. And just remember that the nation that one flag represents all of us and allows all the other flags to fly without issues. So that's what I will say. Thank you.
Councilmember DeMoss.
I do have a few things, thank you. One, I want to respond about the employee wages and housing. I think that we need to start as a city looking at employee housing. You know, Seward's a seasonal town, and I believe that some businesses, especially seasonal ones, are responsible for their own employee housing, and I think that, you know, we utilize a lot of seasonal employees for Parks and Rec and that sort of thing. I'm sure that's why we're 6 or 8 positions down right now, or part of the problem. I think that it's time that we look at securing some sort of housing for transition employees or temporary or some of the higher positions that, you know, when we absolutely need to fill them. I'm not sure if that involves some sort of discussion, but I think that it's time for that. I also think it's time for another wage study. The only wage study that I was a part of was 3 years ago when I first was on council. It had just come back. A lot has happened. It's number one, it's been 3 years, but also the, you know, wages we all know are incredibly higher. And so I would like to start talking about that right away. Congratulations to Chief Nickel and the animal shelter. Thanks for all your hard work, and I believe that Officer Schaefer-Meyer put a lot of work into that, and Shelley obviously, and everybody who, you know, volunteers there and everything. It's just a really big accomplishment. We've been putting up with that small little shelter for a long time, so to see it all come to fruition was really exciting. I was there on Saturday, and the event was really fun. Great pork sandwiches. I also would like to take a moment to thank Karen tonight. Good job. And then I also would like to touch on the Seward Pride Alliance. I thought they did such a great job, especially with some of the loud negative comments that came forward. You know, everyone participated, and there were so many businesses that participated. I think even the Baptist Church got involved. I saw a big bouncy house out there or something, and it was really fun for everybody. So. That's all I have, thanks.
Okay, Vice Mayor Olsenka.
Thank you, of course, to Tim Dillon for all of the things that he's helped us with in our town and of course across the peninsula. I did miss the animal shelter opening, but I think I'll make it over there someday, so hooray, it's open. And if anybody has any pull with Mother Nature, please tell her it is June and we need summer sometime in our future, please. Thank you.
Okay, well, this gives me almost like over 15 minutes to talk before our drop dead time, so I have a few things. The few things are, it was great swearing in the city clerk. These are the things I've done since our last meeting. I was going to give a little report. The big thing was, at the end of May, I attended a meeting in Soldotna at Mayor Machicki's office with the borough mayors, the city mayors, and Peter Machicki. And we're planning to do this quarterly at least. And we had lunch and just talked about things in cities. And I was kind of blown away because some of the other mayors spoke so highly of what we're doing over here and the many of things we're doing. And so that was kind of cool. It's like, I got to see other mayors. That's a big deal. I attended the Chugachmute groundbreaking ceremony for their health clinic. And if you drive along there now, you know where it's going to be. They've cleared a whole bunch of stuff already, so they're getting along with this. And there's a lot of excitement about that. And that was really well attended with the usual drizzle and these things. I attended a few other things too, but I was there just to receive thanks for the city, for everybody. You know, I was like the representative. And then the animal shelter, I got to cut the ribbon with Shelley and with Lila and enjoy the sandwiches and everything. And it is a wonderful facility. If you have not gone in there, go in there. And there's the cat area. My grandson, we went and he's proclaimed it as a wonderful cat shelter. So it's very imaginative and great. And I want to point out, this is my last thing, so I'm not really going to go that long. You should check out the cover of the packet. I suggested a picture to our clerk, Chris, and he came up with this one from some years back. But I want to tell you and invite you to the Solstice Cemetery Tour on the 21st. We always hold it on the 21st at 10:30 p.m. And we start at the Legion Cemetery, and Lee Pileski will be reading obituaries. We have a whole tour mapped out. You don't have to walk very far this year. We've got it kind of easier for people. And it will be a really good time. RBHS sponsors it. I am his assistant, and we do this thing. So we invite everybody. It's a free event, and there will be publicity about this. And I think that's actually all I had. So it's been a long meeting. Oh, I know what I wanted to say too, though. I mentioned sausage making earlier in our previous meeting, and you know, we did a lot tonight. We've been here for over 5 hours, and there are some weird decisions we have to make, and things that a lot of us, you know, we're not really knowledgeable on certain things, and I think I've got to really compliment the whole crew here, that we got done what we got done tonight. So, and thank you to Karen for bravely doing this tonight. You did a great job, and it's good to know that we have backup plans, and Norm, for example, and we would just love to have Norm forever in this seat. You know, I think we all agree with the citizens who have said this, but that's up to Norm. So with that,
Madam Mayor, excuse me, as always.
Every single time, I want the last word, and then
I would be
Councilor
horribly
Dipper.
remiss not to mention that Saturday at noon at the American Legion is the celebration of life for Louis Ben Cardino.
Oh, really?
Yes. So
Oh, wow.
there hasn't been a lot put out
No.
because Van lives up in Eagle River and with the daughter and stuff up there. So at noon on Saturday, celebration of life.
Well, that's worthy of breaking in. So that gives me some more time to add on. No, I recommend that. Anyway, with that, at 10:45, I'll adjourn this meeting.